Chapter 1123. The days of having someone to serve them were very pleasant. When there was trouble, the four women also suppressed the urge to make a move. Although even if they sealed their cultivation base, they could easily kill some hateful guys at any time, but thinking of the main purpose of this mortal world experience, they still resisted the desire to make a move. The four women all have their own favorite interests. For these, Yang Chun naturally arranged very well. Gao Yu only liked to refine. Everywhere he went, Yang Chun would find the most beautiful jewelry store and blacksmith shop and let them take out the best things. Although most of the things were not eye-catching, whether it was the material or the craftsmanship, the design of some things could still make people's eyes light up. Sure, Shan Shan liked to taste tea, so Yang Chun would always take her to tea houses and tea rooms all over the country. He would not let go of the places where tea was grown, and he would taste all the famous tea and water in the world. He also visited a lot of people in the tea ceremony, from tea farmers to tea craftsmen to tea tasting experts, and he knew more about all aspects. Gong Sunling liked food because Yang Chen liked it, so how to satisfy Yang Chen's appetite was her biggest hobby. Famous chefs from all over the world, Gong Sunling almost never missed a visit to discuss the cooking methods of various cuisines and taste the flavors of various places. Every time she made a new dish and got Yang Chen's praise, she would be happy for many days. Sun Qingxue was addicted to wine because of Yang Chun. Naturally, the wineries all over the world could not do without this beautiful wine tasting master. After tasting, she understood the merits and demerits of all kinds of fine wine. Naturally, the method of brewing wine was not less. Traveling around the world gave Yang Chun a lot of new wine, which made Yang Chun happy. From the perspective of the four women, since their cultivation base had been sealed and they could not cultivate, then in addition to cultivating the everlasting Beauty Heart Sutra, they could only send their love to the mountains and rivers and their own fun. Naturally, it was inevitable to enjoy the feeling of being cared for by Yang Chun. Yang Chun would not let his lovely wife suffer. Luxurious clothes and fine food were the most basic standards. Along the way, he had made all kinds of arrangements. He had always treated the four women equally. Sometimes, he would even sleep together and indulge in debauchery. Although the four women were shy, they slowly accepted it after a few times. The pleasures of the boudoir were endless. For a period of time, the four women didn't even need to think about cultivation, their realms, or anything related to cultivators. They only cared about what they were interested in. This kind of relaxation was something that could not be experienced during cultivation. If one had to use a word to describe it, it could only be described as blissful. If it were anyone else, it would be impossible for them to be in such a mood. Even if they were in such a mood, they would not be willing to waste a few decades. After all, in the path of cultivation, if one didn't advance, one would fall behind. Those with poor natural endowments couldn't catch up no matter how hard they tried. So how could they dare to waste a few dozen years? Without Yang Chun, who was so strong that he didn't have to worry about his cultivation being sealed, without the excellent aptitude of the four girls, and without the powerful demonstration that Li Cheng gave to the girls, even the four girls didn't dare to easily slack off. Which sect would allow their own genius disciples to slack off? This journey lasted for 20 years. During these 20 years, the servants and guard around him had been changed several times, so that they wouldn't find out that Yang Chen's family never grew old. 20 years of mortal life had also made the four women completely accustomed to the peace of not needing to fight all the time. At least for now, it could be said that if the seal was unlocked, the four women would never be unable to control their actions. The four women sat on both sides, and Yang Chun lay in the middle of the four women. His head was pillowed on Gao Yu's thigh, and his legs were placed on Gong Sunling's jade thigh. Sun Qingxue and Gong Sunling gently helped Yang Chun to massage his legs. Gao Yu massaged Yang Chen's head. Only Sure Shan Shan was on the side. She never made a move, but her expression was also relaxed. One of her slender jade hands was pulled by Yang Chun, and she didn't say anything. If this scene was seen by cultivators, they would definitely jump in shock. The four famous fairies actually acted like this in front of Yang Chun. How could the hearts of countless handsome cultivators who admired the four fairies not be broken? It seems to be very easy. Why would someone need to go into seclusion for hundreds of years to ease the pain? Sun Qingxue felt relaxed, so she asked when everyone was together. Seclusion is still cultivation. When did they ever relax for a moment? This time, without Yangchen answering, sure Shanshan could give the answer. They're always in a state of cultivation. They always want to become stronger. From the bottom of their heart, they don't want to give up this fighting instinct that is stronger than ordinary cultivators. How can it be easily eased? Believe me, cultivation is not everything. Yang Chun suddenly said, "The Queen Mother of the West often holds a Saturn Peach feast. We are not busier than the Queen Mother of the West, and our realms are not higher than the Queen Mother of the West. So, we still have to do what we have to do." Then what should we do? After 20 years of traveling, the four women's thoughts were very different from before. But at this time, Sun Qingxue still asked with a smile, "I think that serving your husband is the most important matter at hand," Yang Chun said bluntly, not caring that the four women rolled their eyes at him. Cultivation, to put it bluntly, is it not life? Gao Yu patted Yang Chun as if she was blaming Yang Chun for his strange words. Of course, cultivation is also a kind of life. Of course, cultivation is also a kind of life, but it is a kind of boring life. Yang Chun replied with a smile, just like how calmness is also a kind of emotion, what kind of life is not a life? Do you want to live like this with your husband and cultivate, or do you want to sit in a small room and go into seclusion? If it was 20 years ago, the four women might like that kind of cultivation. But now, the four women did not answer. They just punched Yang Chun, who was lying in the middle of the four women, and smiled without saying anything. Then, have we finished our training in the mortal world? Sun Qingxue asked as she pinched Yang Chen's calf. To be honest, she really liked this kind of stress-free life with her husband, and there was a hint of reluctance in her voice. The other three women also stopped the work in their hands, and several pairs of beautiful eyes stared at Yang Chen's face. They all had a look of both expectation and pity. We just traveled all over the mountains and rivers. We haven't really tasted the life of the mortal world. How can we finish it? Yang Chun paused first and hung the appetite of the four women. Then he said slowly, "What else do you want?" Sun Qingxue was obviously excited and asked happily. Gao Yu, Shi Shanshan, and Sun Qingxue also waited for Yang Chen's answer without blinking. "Find a place we like, and we will live like mortals for a few decades." Yang Chun took out the aura of the head of the family and said in a manly manner. Chapter 1124. While Yang Chun accompanied the four wives to tour the mountains and rivers, he did not forget his own cultivation. He did not seal his cultivation base and still continued his own cultivation. Since he promised others to refine pills, Yang Chun certainly would not fall behind. In fact, in the pure bottle medicine garden, the profound spirit furnace had been opening the furnace and refining batches of medicinal pills. The medicinal materials were naturally added by a Zhu and a Bai, and Yang Chen only needed to be distracted to control the fire. The spiritual awareness of the 7th grade human immortal was enough to cope with the needs of alchemy in this situation. The more low-grade appearance pill, the better. The current situation was that no matter how many appearance pills there were, it was not enough for the female cultivators in the world to divide them. Wanbao Tower has already made a lot of money because of this treasure, not to mention the other benefits brought by the appearance pill. Many people have asked for the questioning inner heart pill, and Yang Chun refined hundreds of them at one time. His own sect had to leave a batch, and in the future, when someone asked for pills, they could also be used to deal with it. As for the others, the inner sensing pill and so on, he would first refine a large number of them to meet the increasing needs of the sect. As for the other sect's requests for pills, it was handed over to the head of the palace to deal with. In addition to refining these familiar medicinal pills, Yang Chun was also constantly thinking about how to make use of those devilish beads. It must be known that the quality of the devilish bead in Yang Chen's hands was terrifying. Even those who have already ascended to the demon continent would be shocked. Not only that, in another Qinkuan bag, Yang Chun was still constantly purifying the demonic energy on the ultimate demonized vine of the earth immortal level. Whether it was the devilish bead or this demonized vine, the demonic energy carried by it was enough to make a Deshang stage master who had never been exposed to the demonic energy directly die. If he wanted to use it, Yang Chun must purify it. While touring the world with his wives, Yang Chun did not forget to finish these things. Fortunately, the matter of alchemy was not difficult for Yang Chun, whose spiritual sense had already reached grade 7 of the human immortal stage. In the past 20 years, he had already refined a large number of pills that would make any sect jealous. Yang Chun would first send these elixirs back to Chunyang Palace, and then he would live in seclusion with his wives and live in the way of the human world. While traveling around the world, Yang Chun had already found a place to live in the future. Now he was just rushing over with them. The four women were also looking forward to living quietly with Yang Chun for decades. At the very least, this was a rare moment of leisure in their cultivation. It was also a rare opportunity for them to live like an ordinary husband and wife with their husband. He believed that even if he ascended to the immortal world, these few decades would be the most unforgettable memories. Zhao Qingyun was the son of the Minister of War of the state of Zhao. His name was given by his father, hoping that he would also enter the officialdom in the future and rise rapidly. However, Zhao Qingyun's performance did not coincide with his father's expectations at all. He was completely uninterested in what poetry. Instead, he was very proficient in cockfighting, horse racing, and caged birds. He was not inferior to others in eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling. Together with the other 3 hedonistic sons, he was known as the 4 young masters. Since a few years ago, Zhao Qingyun had heard of the reputation of Qixia Town. Qixia Town was located at the border of the state of Zhao, the state of Lu, and the state of Chun. It was famous for its wine, delicacies, and exquisite jewelry. In fact, Qixia Town also had a special product, which was famous tea. However, this Zhao Qingyun did not care about famous tea. That was something that only those who considered themselves elegant would like. What young Master Zhao liked was wine, delicacies, and beauties. The reason why he knew about exquisite jewelry was naturally because of the beauties. In these few years, many noble ladies and socialites were proud to be able to buy exquisite jewelry and clothes from Qixia Town. Zhao Qingyun used it to curry favor with beauties, so he had naturally heard of Qixia Town's Blue Cloud Art Workshop. Unfortunately, good things were always very rare. Although young Master Zhao had heard of this reputation, he had only tasted the wine from Snowdance Winery once, and it was only one kind. As for the food from the most famous Flowing Cloud restaurant, he had never had the chance to taste it. They only sold it in Flowing Cloud restaurant and did not go out at all. However, young Master Zhao had wanted to go to Qixia Town for a long time. Not for anything else, but for the beauties. It was said that whether it was the owner of Blue Cloud Art Workshop, the cook of Flowing Cloud Restaurant, the shopkeeper of Snowdance Winery, or even the owner of Winter Plum Tea House, they were all extremely beautiful. Even if young Master Zhao did not like famous tea, it did not stop him from wanting to see the owner of Winter Plum Tea House. This time, young Master Zhao finally had the chance. He was allowed by his father to leave the capital and travel abroad. Young Master Zhao brought his group of strong guards and headed straight for Qixia Town as their first stop. Qixia Town was not big, and there were only a few hundred families. In reality, 10 years ago, there was no such town as Qixia Town. It was just a piece of empty land with mountains and rivers on one side. As for why no one lived here, it was because it was a good place with good feng shui. It was only suitable for people to live in. However, this did not stop the people who came. They chose to settle here, build houses, and cultivate the land. Soon, thousands of people gathered here. In the next few years, the reputation of good wine, good food, good tea, and good jewelry spread, causing the surrounding vassal states to crazily chase after them. At the same time, the reputation of the beautiful shopkeepers also spread. The first thing young Master Zhao did when he arrived at Qixia Town was to go straight to Flowing Cloud Restaurant. This place only accepted reservations for 10 tables every day, and then no more. Young Master Zhao had never tasted the food here, so of course he had to try it first. Someone had already arrived early and reserved a table. As for how to snatch a table from the crowded reservation, this was not something the son of a minister had to worry about. To be honest, although Zhao Qingyin's father was only the minister of a vassal state, he was still the minister of a vassal state that spanned thousands of miles. As the son of a minister, what kind of food had he not tasted before? In his eyes, the name of this delicacy was probably just a gimmick to attract those country bumpkins who had not seen much of the world. Young Master Zhao's motive was, of course, not the wine owner's cup of tea. He was here for the supposedly very beautiful cooking maid. If she really caught his eye, the kitchen of the Minister of War would not be a disgrace to a little kitchen maid. Naturally, young Master Zhao could also get close to her at any time. Before seeing the kitchen maid, the food was served. Young Master Zhao casually picked up his chopsticks and picked up a piece of tofu that looked very ordinary and put it into his mouth. Chapter 1125. This plate of mapo tofu looked beautiful with a bright color, but it only looked beautiful. There was not even a trace of fragrance. Originally, young Master Zhao did not expect much. He just wanted to fill his stomach. However, as soon as the tofu entered his mouth, young Master Zhao was shocked. He straightened his back and opened his eyes wide. An indescribable delicacy suddenly exploded in his mouth on the piece of tofu on the tip of the chopsticks. It was as if all the taste had been concentrated into the tofu, and not a single bit of it was omitted. Only when the tofu entered his mouth and was squeezed by his teeth and tongue did the taste burst forth. Spicy, fresh, and fragrant. Countless tastes reverberated in his mouth. Even young Master Zhao couldn't easily express how delicious it was. Just this mouthful of tofu made young Master Zhao feel that all the food he had eaten before was simply pig's food. There were so many so-called famous chefs at home. All of them should be thrown into the well and drowned. Even a mouthful of tofu was like this, not to mention the other dishes. Young Master Zhao's current behavior was completely unlike that of one of the four princes of the kingdom of Zhao. He was simply a country bumpkin who had never eaten good food. Like a tornado sweeping away the clouds, he swept away the few dishes that had already been served, looking like a beggar who had not eaten for God knows how many days. Not to mention young Master Zhao. Even the guards who had been rewarded by young Master Zhao to sit down and eat with him were like a bunch of hungry mad dogs. They started to make big moves on the dining table, even ignoring the fact that their young master was right beside them. They were having a lot of fun fighting over food. While eating, they casually picked up a cup and drank a mouthful of the food wine. Suddenly, a completely different taste appeared in their mouths. The taste of the wine was not strong, but it did not cover up the taste of the food. It even improved the taste of the food. No wonder it was called the food wine. It deserved its reputation. In just a short while, a table that was enough for 10 people to fill their stomachs was cleaned up by the 5 of them, including young Master Zhao. The 5 of them touched their bulging bellies. Looking at the messy plates and cups on the table, they still wanted more. It seemed that they could finish another table without hesitation. Unfortunately, the Flowing Cloud restaurant was not an ordinary restaurant. One table meant one table. There would not be more than one. Even so, young Master Zhao was still very satisfied. This kind of food was indeed worthy of its reputation. Sigh, what a pity. At the next table, a guy who looked like a glutton was leisurely enjoying the delicacies on his table with a few friends. Suddenly, he let out a sigh. "Brother, why are you sighing?" Someone next to old Taodai immediately asked, "What do you think of the delicacies here?" The glutton didn't answer the question. "I wish I could swallow it with my tongue." Immediately, a friend who was a glutton answered vaguely while chewing on his food. This reply caused young Master Zhao and the other guards to nod their heads in agreement. It was true that he had never eaten it before, but as long as he tasted it, he would know how tempting it was. What this friend said just now was not excessive at all. But these dishes were made by the disciple of the Flowing Cloud restaurant's cook. I really want to know how delicious they would be if she cooked them herself. The glutton sighed and shook his head. This was the first time everyone, including young Master Zhao, had tasted it. How would they know the secrets behind it? When they heard that these delicacies were made by the cooking maid's disciple, Everyone began to look forward to the cooking skills of the cooking maid. Why didn't the cooking maid cook them herself? We came here because of her reputation. The glutton's friend was a little dissatisfied and complained. You can't blame her. When she opened this restaurant, she said that only a few people in this world could taste her cooking. The others don't need to think too much about it. The glutton knew a lot of things, so he began to talk about them one by one. Who is it that has such good luck? Everyone was instantly curious, and they made inquiries. Only the master of this restaurant and the cooking maid's sisters. The glutton showed off for a while, and then said, the master is the cooking maid's husband, and the sisters are the master's wives. The wine that we tasted was brewed by another lady from the main family's Snowdance winery. Oh, everyone came to a sudden realization. Only now did they remember that the wine they had just drunk felt different when it entered their mouths. It was full of flavor, but it turned out to be the Snowdance winery's wine. This head of the family actually married a few sisters, and they were all legendary beauties, which made young Master Zhao very envious. This was especially true after tasting the delicacies and wine. Just as he was rubbing his belly and sighing, the corner of young Master Zhao's eye suddenly flashed a beautiful figure, immediately attracting young Master Zhao's attention. A woman dressed in plain clothes gracefully walked out of the kitchen and left the restaurant's entrance. Young Master Zhao had only taken a quick glance at her before he was stunned by the beauty of the woman. His mind was filled with nothing but the woman's beautiful smile. Not only young Master Zhao, but almost all the diners present had the same expression. Her beauty could no longer be described using the words of the mortal world. She was simply a fairy. Who was that? Young Master Zhao murmured. Apart from the beauty's appearance, that was the only question left in his mind. That's the cooking maid of the Flowing Cloud restaurant. The glutton might have been here many times. Although he was still immersed in it, he quickly sobered up and answered, how can such a beauty be reduced to a cooking maid? What a waste. It was rare for young Master Zhao to say such a phrase, but it seemed to be what everyone was thinking. Such a woman was actually a cooking maid. How could they endure it? I want her. I want her. After murmuring a few words, young Master Zhao suddenly shouted, I want her. I don't care who her master is, who her husband is. Take her back from me. Even if she's the wife of the Emperor of Heaven, I want her. Take her back from me. One of the four great young masters of Zhao, young Master Zhao Qingyan. Which beauty could escape from young Master Zhao's clutches? Young Master Zhao had defiled countless women in the capital. Now that he had seen such a beautiful woman, how could he care about anything else? He had to make a move first. As soon as young Master Zhao said this, the few guards immediately responded in unison and stood up to chase after him. However, many people who heard young Master Zhao's roar suddenly focused their attention on his face. They looked at him as if they were looking at a dead man. I don't know him. I'm only here to eat. Someone immediately took a few steps back, as if young Master Zhao had some kind of plague and was afraid of spreading it. What he does has nothing to do with us. Chapter 11:26. You have guts. It was unknown how many people had the same thoughts in their hearts, but they secretly gave young Master Zhao a thumbs up in their hearts. They only dared to think this way, but they had never dared to say it out loud. Young Master Zhao had indeed spoken their hearts. Unfortunately, the outcome had already been predicted. Where did you come from? How dare you be so rude to my mistress? A shout came from the side, and a dozen waiters suddenly appeared beside young Master Zhao and the four guards. Among them, the waiters who had just served their food were among them. Bang, 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 bang. A series of sounds rang out one after another, and before the four guards could even stand up, they had already been showered with rolling pins and towels, knocking them unconscious. Even though they had already fallen, there was still a large amount of punches and kicks, and the four of them looked like they were no longer human beings in an instant. Young Master Zhao looked like a respectable person, and for a moment, before the punches and kicks reached his body, two old men who looked like stewards had already walked over. The two stewards were not young, and there were deep wrinkles on their faces. What was strange was that there was not a single strand of beard on their chins. Where did this little bastard come from, to dare be so rude to my mistress in front of me? Before the person had even arrived, one of the steward's sharp voice had already sounded. "Greetings, Elder Zhao. Greetings, Elder Chun. Greetings, Manager Zhao. Greetings, Manager Chun." The moment the two stewards appeared, a wave of greetings greeted them, all of them greeting them. Everyone who spoke had a smile on their face and cupped their hands, as if the two old stewards were even closer to them than their own fathers. The symbol of Minister Zhao's family? Without waiting for the steward to walk over, a waiter had already brought the family crest of the guards to the steward and presented it with both hands. "You should handle the matters of the state of Zhao, Steward Zhao." Of the two stewards, the one who had not spoken saw the family crest and instantly lost interest. He walked to the side, and naturally, the waiter attentively brought the old man a chair to sit on. "Could it be that you, little bastard, are the son of Minister Zhao's family, the one known as the four great young masters, Zhao Qingyun?" Steward Zhao walked up to Zhao Qingyun and asked, "It's me, your young master." When Zhao Qingyun heard that he knew him, he immediately trembled. Just as he was about to arrogantly demand an explanation from the waiters who had beaten up his guards, he suddenly felt a heavy slap on his face. "What kind of messy young master are you? When Steward Zhao is standing, you dare to sit." A waiter at the side unceremoniously slapped young Master Zhao's face. In an instant, young Master Zhao's entire body was slapped up. He spun in the air and fell heavily onto the greasy floor. From birth until now, when had Zhao Qingyun ever suffered like this? He was used to doing whatever he wanted in the kingdom of Zhao, so how could he understand the situation in front of him? He didn't even consider what Chief Steward Zhao meant when he first opened his mouth. "You dare to hit me? Are you tired of living?" Clutching his face, young Master Zhao spat out a few harsh words before struggling to get up. "Damn it, I'm going to kill your entire family." It seems like Minister Zhao's family is really lacking in discipline. Today, I'll help him discipline you, little bastard, so that you don't cause trouble for your family. An armchair had already appeared behind Chief Steward Zhao. Chief Steward Zhao raised his robes and sat down. With a frosty expression, he said, "Slap him." Zhao Qingyun, who had just gotten up a little, suddenly had an additional foot on his back. It directly stepped on his body that had just gotten up a little. Following that, his back loosened and his arms hurt. Someone had twisted them from both sides and forcefully pulled him up from the ground. A waiter held a straight spatula in his hand and slapped Zhao Qingyun's face. Slap, 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 slap. In the beginning, Zhao Qingyun was still spouting arrogant words. After a dozen slaps, his entire mouth and both sides of his cheeks were already swollen. There were even some places where the skin had already broken and bled. However, the waiter who was slapping him didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. He was still slapping him with the spatula. The intense pain made Zhao Qingyun finally realize that if he dared to play tough with his mouth, he would suffer even more. He immediately quietened down. Even when he was in unbearable pain, he didn't dare to make a sound. As expected, the moment he shut his mouth, the spatula opposite him stopped. The two hands that were twisting his arms also let go. Young Master Zhao's body went limp, and he once again sprawled on the ground. At such a young age, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How dare you spout such arrogant words here? Chief Steward Zhao didn't know when a cup of fragrant tea had appeared in his hand. He lifted the lid of the teacup lightly and took a sip. Only then did he cross his legs and speak slowly. Not to mention a mere minister of war, even the current prime minister would have to be well-behaved and well-behaved here. Chief Steward Zhao's eyes only glanced down at Zhao Qingyun. "Today, seeing that it's your first offense, I'll be lenient." Hearing the words lenient, young Master Zhao finally felt a little relieved. At home, he had heard these words many times. Every time he got into trouble, his father would be lenient on him after his mother begged him. As long as he said this, it meant that everything would be fine. Break his two legs and let them drag themselves back to their own residences. Chief Steward Zhao didn't care what young Master Zhao was thinking in his heart. He casually instructed, "How unlucky! I shouldn't have disturbed everyone's mood to eat." Zhao Qingyun's entire body was already rooted to the ground. Lenient punishment was still breaking his two legs. What if he were to be more severe? Just as he was thinking, the two people behind him had already raised two thick rolling pins and smashed them towards young Master Zhao's two legs. Both of his legs suddenly felt a sharp pain, and two crisp sounds of bones breaking could be heard from Zhao Qingyun's legs. Young Master Zhao only managed to let out half a scream before someone stuffed a dirty rag into his mouth to muffle his voice. Then, young Master Zhao Qingyun immediately fainted. Everyone! After dealing with Zhao Qingyun, Chief Steward Zhao, who was sitting, immediately stood up and bowed to the surrounding customers. I'm really sorry. The people of Zhao don't have strict discipline and have caused trouble for everyone. Today, I'll send a pot of wine to every table as an apology. Well said. The people at the side didn't seem surprised at all. They were used to this kind of situation. Moreover, who would dare to put on airs at a time like this? They all spoke politely to Chief Steward Zhao, then sat down and continued to eat and drink as if nothing had happened. Chapter 11:27. Zhao Qingyun finally woke up from the pain. His legs had been fixed with splints, but the pain came in bursts, making him miserable. After waking up for a while, Zhao Qingyun realized that she was on a slow ox cart. Beside her were a few of her bodyguards, who were bandaging her bruised face. After a long time, Zhao Qingyun remembered what had happened. Just as he was about to get angry, he moved his body and caused a sharp pain. He wanted to scold, but his mouth and face were extremely painful and swollen, so he couldn't say a word. Noticing that their young master had woken up, the four guards hurriedly came up to check. One of the guards finally recounted the events that transpired afterward in a disjointed manner. In fact, there was nothing special. They were just thrown out by a few waiters, and then woke up with a few buckets of cold water poured on their heads. They handed the young master whose legs were broken to them, threw a sign, and told them to go home. We saw the sign. It's the sign of the manager of the imperial kitchen in the palace. Another guard had a mournful expression on his face as he brought the token to Zhao Qingyun's eyes. That head steward Zhao should be the head steward of the imperial kitchen in the palace. Those waiters are all experts in martial arts, but they all look like eunuchs. After his legs were broken by the people from the palace, Zhao Qingyun knew that he couldn't get back at them no matter how daring he was. It was already polite that they didn't find him to settle the score. If he dared to be ungrateful again, it was estimated that next time, it wouldn't be just a matter of breaking his legs. At the thought of this, Zhao Qingyun took a cold breath and felt a lingering fear. He didn't even feel the pain of his broken legs. He was just curious about what kind of place the Luyan restaurant was. How could there be a manager of the imperial kitchen who had practiced martial arts? And even the waiters were eunuchs who had practiced martial arts. Of course, the cooked food is the best to taste at the first time. At this moment, Gong Sumling was holding a plate of seemingly ordinary scrambled eggs and put it in front of Yang Chun. If I don't walk quickly, how can I send it to you as soon as possible? This was Gong Suinling's consistent insistence. All the dishes were prepared immediately for Yang Chun to taste, so as to maintain the best taste. The chefs of the Flowing Cloud restaurant were all Gong Suinling's disciples. Of course, most of them had another identity, imperial chefs of the surrounding vassal states. He was specially sent to the Flowing Cloud restaurant to learn how to cook. Apart from the imperial chefs, the imperial kitchens of the various vassal states would usually be staffed by a few eunuchs. Not only did they have to learn how to cook, but they also had to learn how to serve the dishes. They even had to learn how to taste the dishes so that they wouldn't ruin the appearance of the dishes. These people were the stewards and waiters of the Flowing Cloud restaurant. They volunteered to serve the diners who came from all over the world. Of course, there were gluttons among the diners, and there were also those who wanted to curry favor with these people. Not only in the Flowing Cloud restaurant, but also in the Cold Plum Tea House and the Snowdance Winery. They were all experts who were sent from all over the world to learn how to make tea and wine. At the same time, they were also the service staff of the winery and the tea house. Carts after carts of good water from all over the world, as well as good tea and rice from all over the world. It was all for the beautiful winemaker of the winery and the beautiful tea ceremony master of the tea house to make the best wine and the most delicious tea. The top tea and wine were the tributes of the royal families of each country. If ordinary people wanted to buy them, No matter how high their status or how much wealth they had, they could only buy the second-rate ones. As for the Blue Clouds Art Workshop, it was not only making jewelry. In fact, from head to toe, as long as it was worn by a person, it could be found in the Blue Clouds Art Workshop. Similarly, all kinds of the most exquisite materials from all over the world were carts of carts for the master to choose from. The best things had also been divided by the royal families of each country before they were seen by outsiders. Those with money and status could only get some second-rate goods. Even so, these so-called second-rate goods were also famous at that time. Countless people were crazy for them and chased after them endlessly. As early as a few years ago, the owner of Qixia Town had established an unusual relationship with the royal families of the surrounding countries. No matter what happened, there would be people from the inner mansion of each country to deal with it. Zhao Qingyan did not know the secrets of this at all. She thought she was so great, but her legs were broken. Naturally, the owner of this Qixia town was Yang Chun. The master of the Blue Clouds Art Workshop was Gao Yu. The tea master of the Cold Plum Tea House was Shi Shan Shan. The cook of the Flowing Cloud Restaurant was Gong Sun Ling, and the winemaker of the Snowdance Winery was Sun Qing Xue. Everyone was here to manage the kind of things they liked the most, but they were also very free and unfettered. Even the royal families of each country would never have thought that the really good things would never be given to them. The first-class goods that they thought of as super first-class goods, in the eyes of the four women, did not even reach the standard. They were just some unfashionable side goods. Managing these things was also an experience in life. Even the experience of the four women was more thorough than that of many cultivators, as they directly trained in the mortal world. Even though there were people from the royal families of the various countries in charge of solving problems, most of the time, it was still the four women who personally received the guests, amiably bargaining with them. This kind of life that was almost impossible in their eyes in the past was a common occurrence here. The more people they came into contact with, the calmer the four women became. This was not the process of contact with cultivators at all. No matter how much contact they had with cultivators, they would not have such a feeling. On one hand, this was one thing, but on the other hand, they could stay with their husbands every day. There was no cultivation, no seclusion, no discussion of cultivation. It was purely the feeling of living with their husbands. There was no sect, no evil to defend the Tao. There was only family matters. There was only the things they liked. There was only the love of their husbands almost all the time. This feeling even made the four women a little intoxicated. They really hoped that this kind of life would continue like this forever and never end. Power is also a kind of invisible power, but sometimes it is more useful than brute force. Yang Chen often said this. In fact, the women had indeed seen the power of power, and they had also used it to perfection. Naturally, they also had a better understanding of the concept of power. In addition, since we are in the mortal world, then we can't always remain so young and beautiful, right? Yang Chen looked at the four beautiful wives and said with a smile, "Mortals have mortal lives, birth, old age, illness, and death. No matter what, we have to experience it. Otherwise, what would be the point? From today onwards, you will slowly become middle-aged and then get older and older. This is the right way." Chapter 1128. Originally, what Yang Chen said to the four girls was that they would train in the mortal world for a few decades. Although the four girls could still rely on their youthful cultivation to maintain their youth after sealing their cultivation, it was inconceivable in the eyes of mortals. Fortunately, it had only been a few short years since they took root in Qixia Town. The four girls were in the prime of their youth, so it was normal for them not to change too much. However, if it was still like this in the future, then it would be abnormal. The four girls also wanted to know what would happen if their appearance slowly aged, but they were reluctant to give up their beautiful appearance. It was only until Yang Chen repeatedly promised that as long as they persisted in their cultivation of the youthful cultivation method, even if they ascended to the immortal world, they would still have their current appearance, that they finally complied. Of course, it was not that difficult to show signs of aging to the outside world. Yang Chen only needed a simple camouflage to achieve it. Time slowly passed, and in the blink of an eye, 20 years had passed. The four girls had also turned from youthful beauty to middle-aged beauty. Their business had always been thriving, but there were basically no more troubles caused by their appearance. Without many extra entanglements, the four girls' respective businesses also had some small troubles when they concentrated on money, but basically, it was normal business competition. No one had ever dared to touch the heads of these industries in Qixia Town in other aspects. The four girls, easygoing, made the people from the inner mansions sent by the royal families of the various countries live very comfortably. Not only were their lives taken care of comfortably, but Yang Chen's family was not stingy with money, which made these people exceptionally satisfied. Therefore, these people became more and more attentive in many matters. Sometimes, when there was a small business dispute, these people would eagerly take the initiative to help. Of course, they also knew that Yang Chen's family did not like to always use power to suppress others. They always used normal business methods to counterattack, but the results were outstanding. This allowed the four girls to see a different world. Under their curiosity, they also began to ask these people from the inner mansion for advice in their daily lives. With a large amount of money as a reward, coupled with the master's easygoing personality, he treated them like family. So these people from the inner mansion were naturally considerate. Since their master was asking for guidance, they wouldn't be stingy with what they knew. In this world, the most complicated place was none other than the palaces of various countries. For the sake of various kinds of power, status, favor, inheritance of royal authority, and so on, there were countless entanglements that simply made the four women feel like they were listening to a book from heaven. There were all kinds of conspiracies and tricks, bright and dark on the stage, under the table, upright and sinister, calling people big brother in front of people, and pulling out weapons behind people's backs. The four women had a solid lesson of all living beings. The struggle of the little people, the struggle of the big people, the struggle of the emperor and the ministers, the struggle between the ministers, the struggle between the imperial concubines, the struggle of the family. Everything could be an eye-opener for the four women. Just relying on one's power to suppress others was already an extremely simple method. However, even the emperors of various countries could not live up to their expectations, let alone others. The more they understood, the deeper their feelings became. The so-called gratitude and grudges among the cultivators could be found in the human world, magnified 100 times. Compared with these disagreements in the imperial palace, the cultivators were simply child's play. After all, most of the time, the cultivators still had to focus on cultivation, but these guys in the human world spent 100% of their energy on this. Countless true stories of open and secret struggles allowed the four women to see almost all kinds of people in the short span of 20 years. Even Yang Chen, after hearing these stories, could not help but have some insights. When fighting against the devil Qi, there was always a tempering of the state of mind. What was experience? This was experience. Now, the four women recalled the so-called experiential learning in the past. They gathered a few companions, found a few enemies, and killed their way to the door. Slaying demons and devils was considered to have completed the experiential learning. Now, it seemed that it was simply playing house. Compared with the dangers of the human world, the cultivators were as simple as children. Good people were good people, bad people were bad people. If it was not simple, then what was it? Unconsciously, the four women also began to pay attention to the history of the change of dynasties in the human world. From those historical facts, they could understand more about the disputes between people and learn more about the means to deal with them. The change of dynasties in the human world was far more than the world of cultivators. In the same thousands of years, dozens of generations had passed in the mortal world, and the dynasties had changed countless times. The richness of the experience far exceeded that of the cultivators who immersed themselves in cultivation. Not to mention anything else, just the number of birth, old age, sickness, and death had far exceeded that of the cultivators. The short life of the mortals of a few decades countless times had written a glorious and tragic song that those long-lived cultivators could not imagine. It was not something that those cultivators who had a long life, and even the sect had never experienced life and death since the establishment of the sect, could understand. At this time, the four women understood why Yang Chun always liked to read some miscellaneous books, among which was this type. It turned out that they could really learn a lot of things from it, and it was far from being able to understand by immersing themselves in cultivation. Even if the four women did not deliberately cultivate in the past few decades, the changes in their state of mind were like experiencing nirvana. The simple persistence that they had at the beginning and the simple persistence that they had after understanding the complexity were completely different. Although they did not personally experience it, even if they listened to others or learned from books, they could understand the dangers of these things, as if they had experienced it themselves. The state of mind of Yang Chen's family, every day, seemed to be constantly sharpened in a large vat full of emery, grinding away the fragments that could not be condensed into a whole, leaving only the most solid core, and then slowly becoming angular and sharp, and then becoming smooth under constant sharpening, and then reaching the kind of true transcendence that saw through the world. At this point, in fact, whether it was the killing syndrome or the emotional control of some heart demons, they were no longer under the control of the four women. In the past, they relied on the stimulation of the devil chi to trigger all kinds of emotional riots, but they were just simple emotional riots. But now, if there was the same degree of devil chi stimulation, it was almost impossible to cause the emotions of the four women to fluctuate. Even Yang Chun himself, in terms of resisting the devil chi, had made great progress. The speed of absorbing the devil chi of the ultimate demonized vine had also greatly improved. In a short period of 20 years, he had already absorbed more than half of it. It seemed that in a few years, he could completely absorb the devil chi of the ultimate demonized vine. Chapter 1129. In the mortal world experience, the four women were cultivating, but Yang Chun was not only doing this. While he was cultivating, he was also alchemy, and at the same time, he was also absorbing and resisting the demonic chi, and even took time to absorb several kinds of demonic fire. If it wasn't for the fear of interference in alchemy, Yang Chun even wanted to absorb a few more fifth-grade fire seeds. In addition, Yang Chun was thinking about ways to improve the strength of the four women. The ultimate demonized demon vine was the gift that Yang Chun intended to give to Sun Qingxue. At that time, Sun Qingxue's master, the Deshang stage Elder Hua Wanting of the Blue Cloud sect, was accidentally entangled by the blood demon vine. For this reason, she sat alone and resisted the blood demon vine for hundreds of years. After being rescued by Yang Chun, her strength broke out, and she was promoted to the Deshang stage in one fell swoop. Because of the 100 years of life and death tempering, it also created Elder Hua's powerful combat power. Even if it was only the early Deshang stage, he would not be at a disadvantage against a master in the middle Deshang stage. With such a living example in front of him, Yang Chun certainly wanted to let his wife, Sun Qingxue, experience a bit of tempering. Although it was not like Elder Hua's 100 years of life and death tempering, but at least it was necessary to let Sun Qingxue have a little more strength. In the past few decades, Bai has integrated the seed of the demonized demon vine and has been breeding a blue jade blood phantom vine seed, according to Yang Chen's instructions. This seed, Yang Chun intended to plant it on the ultimate demonized demon vine and then inject it into Sun Qingxue's body. The combination of the blood demon vine and the demonized demon vine could also make Sun Qingxue suffer, but with the addition of the blue jade vine, it would not be as dangerous as Elder Hua. After integrating this Earth Immortal level demonized demon vine, he believed that Sun Qingxue's strength would skyrocket, and she would also have a stronger protection. For Sun Qingxue, who is also a wood elemental, this kind of pure wood elemental item was definitely a great supplement. For a long time to come, even until she ascended, Sun Qingxue would probably be restrained in the process of absorbing and fusing with the ultimate demonized vine. The second stage Earth Immortal Demonic Vine was the target that Sun Qingxue would work hard on for hundreds or even thousands of years in the future. Just this alone was enough to make Sun Qingxue even more glorious than she was in her previous life. In fact, apart from Sun Qingxue, Yang Chun had similar considerations for each of his wives. It was just that it was not time yet, so he could not realize it. The first townspeople of Xixia Town were all the guards and servants that Yang Chun had hired. After coming here, Yang Chun had given them houses and land, and they all worshipped Yang Chun like he was a Buddha. Later on, more and more guests came to Xixia Town, and their lives got better and better. In the eyes of these townspeople, Yang Chen's family was a great benefactor bestowed by the heavens. There was no better master than them. The only pity was that although young Master Yang married 4 beautiful wives, he had no children, which was quite a pity. Later on, young Master Yang found a large number of people from God knows where, and even recognized a few godparents. The town grew bigger and bigger, and life became more and more perfect. No one knew that these people that Yang Chun found later on were the descendants of Yang Chun, Gao Yu, Shi Shan Shan, Gong Sunling, and Sun Qingxue. Some of the core skills were taught to them so that they could have more income for the family in the future. However, this relationship was not known to them. After a few decades of peaceful life, the people of the town watched as the main family lived a peaceful life and slowly grew old without any disturbances. As for themselves, they became old men and women, became grandparents, had sons, grandsons, and even great-grandchildren. No one knew why the people here could live so long. They could only attribute it to good feng shui. However, according to an expert who had seen the feng shui of this place before, this was clearly a Yudai cave with a mountain on one side and a river on the other. It was only suitable for a small family to bury a grave. How could it be a good feng shui? Decades passed, and Xixia Town grew bigger and bigger. It became Xixia County, and then Xixia Commandery. The 3 kingdoms fought fiercely for the ownership of Xixia Commandery. An open spear and a covert stab were staged in front of Yang Chun and the 4 women. In the end, it was Yang Chun who stepped in and split Xixia Prefecture into 3 smaller districts. Only then did the fighting cease. In any case, Xixia Town was originally located at the border of the 3 countries, so all 3 countries had partial sovereignty over it. At least when Yang Chun was alive, no one dared to have any ideas about this place. As for what would happen after death, it was not Yang Chen's business. Predecessors planted trees for future generations to enjoy, and future generations had to have the ability to enjoy the shade. They could not always lie on the foundation of their predecessors and live off their predecessors. Soon, 50 years had passed. Yang Chun and the 4 women had become old men and old women. Although they still looked healthy, many people had other thoughts. You've already experienced old age and sickness. Do you want to try death? Yang Chun asked with a smile when he was with the 4 women. It's not bad to see what happens. Although Sun Qingxue had become more mature over the decades, she was still the most mischievous among the 4 women. This was also the kind of nature that Yang Chun liked. She immediately replied with a smile. She had seen others die, but she had never seen herself die. Of course, she did not want to experience what it felt like to die. Instead, she wanted to know what would happen after she died. She wanted to know how the people who had lived with her for decades would react. She wanted to know how they would feel when she left. In fact, there were many deaths and deaths among cultivators. It was just that everyone was more indifferent to it, unlike the common people. None of the 4 women objected. At this point, it was basically time for them to leave the mortal world. They would use this death to bid farewell. In the next 6 months, the 4 women passed away one by one. Then, Yang Chun personally organized their funerals and buried their coffins in tombs that had been built 20 years ago. The passing of the 4 masters and the departure of the 4 benevolent old men brought great sorrow to Xixia Prefecture. The 4 women had indeed witnessed the feelings of mortals. After that, even Yang Chun passed away silently one night. The descendants of the old townspeople followed Yang Chen's orders and buried him and the 4 women together in one place. From then on, Yang Chun and the other 4 old men no longer existed in the world. However, in the tombs that no one could see, the 4 women and Yang Chun were lying in their own coffins. It was as if they had really died. There was no sign of the living at all. Just like that, he lay there quietly for 20 years. Chapter 1130. At first, the The four women did not think that Yang Chun would really let them be buried in the grave. However, with their cultivation sealed, they were unable to resist at all. They were easily sealed by Yang Chun into a strange state of suspended animation, and then given a grand burial. As for what Yang Chun's intentions were, he did not say it clearly. The four women only knew one thing, and that was that Yang Chun would never harm them. With this foundation and premise, the four women also silently accepted Yang Chun's arrangements. One by one, they were sealed by him and then buried. First was Gao Yu, then Gong Sunling, then Shi Shan Shan, and finally Sun Qingxue. After the four women, it was Yang Chun's turn. Of course, Yang Chun was sent to the grave in a conscious state. After setting up an alarm formation in the grave that could wake him up at any time, Yang Chun also began to cultivate a type of suspended animation martial art, entering that state of suspended animation. No one would think that there was anything strange about this. The grave was something that Yang Chun had set his eyes on a long time ago, and he had begun to build it more than 10 years in advance. Some feng shui masters had also taken a look, and it happened to be where the Yudai cave of Xixia town was originally located. It was not a strange place. The inside of the grave was even more simple. There was neither the splendor of a rich family, nor any funerary objects. If it had to be said that it was valuable, it would be a few coffins that were made of good old Nama wood. Apart from that, there was nothing else. The only thing that was a little special was that the grave was deep enough. It was several tens of feet deep. If it were not for Grandfather Yang's arrangements, just digging up the grave and sending in new coffins to be buried together would have been troublesome. Fortunately, it would only be troublesome a few times. After Grandfather Yang was buried, no one would touch this grave again. Firstly, there was nothing valuable. Secondly, it was too deep, and it would take a lot of effort to dig. No matter how glorious they were when they were alive, they were nothing more than a pile of dirt after death. Very soon, the people of Qixia Prefecture slowly forgot about Yang Chun's family. 20 years later, other than the skills that Yang Chun's family had passed down, there was no longer any memory of Yang Chun's family. In Qixia Prefecture, only those over the age of 40 would occasionally think of old Master Yang and his four wives, and only then would they tell their stories in front of their children and grandchildren. However, this story was soon forgotten. The vicissitudes of the world were simply too fast. A simple and crude tomb would naturally not attract the patronage of grave robbers. Moreover, it was buried hundreds of feet underground, which made it impossible for grave robbers to think about it. The years that Yang Chun's family spent in the cemetery were unusually quiet. For 20 years, the 5 coffins were neatly placed in the tomb chamber. Yang Chun was in the center, and the 4 women were in 4 directions, surrounding Yang Chun. Until a certain time passed, there was finally some movement in the coffin that Yang Chun was lying in the center. The long nails that were nailed to the coffin lid flew up one by one, as if there was an invisible hand pulling out all the nails one by one. After all the long nails had flown up, the coffin lid was gently lifted and moved from the inside to the side. Then, Yang Chun sat up in the coffin. With a wave of his hand, a few luminous pearls appeared at the top of the tomb chamber, illuminating the entire tomb chamber. Yang Chun casually cast a spell to avoid dust, and after sweeping away all the dust around him, he began to open the coffins of the 4 women one by one. After lying down for 20 years, the bodies of the 4 women did not change at all. The camouflage on their bodies was still there, and they looked like 4 old women. Yang Chun easily put away the camouflage and woke the 4 women up from their sealed state one by one, then helped them sit up. 20 years of motionlessness. Even the Yuanying stage masters were a little uncomfortable, not to mention that their cultivation bases had long been sealed. After half an hour of adaptation, the 4 women woke up from that state of ignorance, and then they understood where they were. Although she was the last of the 4 women to be buried, Sun Qingxue saw that the place where she was lying turned out to be a coffin. She still let out a scream, and then regardless of anything, she rushed into the arms of Yang Chun, regardless of Yang Chun, who was massaging Gao Yu at this time. What are you afraid of? You have already died once. Are you still afraid of the coffin? Yang Chun gently touched Sun Qingshue's little head, then smiled and teased. This is not the performance of the Yuanying stage master snow dancing fairy. Isn't my cultivation base sealed? Naturally, I will be afraid. Sun Qingxue pouted and retorted. But she soon found that she couldn't find an alliance. The other three women were all doing their own activities and then looked at her with a smile. Husband, why do you have to let us be buried? Sun Qingxue couldn't understand things and immediately asked, unceremoniously, if you don't die once, how can it be considered a worldly experience? Yang Chun replied with a smile. Don't you feel that this is also a kind of experience, a kind of realization? In fact, since Yang Chun woke up the women, the four women began to ponder. They were all people with excellent understanding, and it was easy to understand Yang Chun's intentions. To be honest, such a death, once it really made people have a kind of indescribable feeling. In particular, they were still placed in a coffin and then buried in this tomb. That feeling was really difficult to express in words. Is this the feeling of death? After Shi Shanshan moved for a while, she sat on the lid of the coffin that belonged to her without hesitation and said, after mortals die, it is really troublesome. It didn't seem strange for Shi Shanshan to say this. At least in Shi Shanshan's eyes, those outsiders' sadness, pain, reluctance, and even secretly joy and so on. But no matter what they thought in their hearts, they always put on a sad appearance on the surface. In particular, some of their former business competitors and those who had been tricked by them and held a grudge even sent people to mourn. Some people were really sad, so much so that they would really kneel in front of their memorial tablets to pay their respects, saying that death was a big deal and the grudges of many years could be considered to be written off. When a person died, everything was over, and even the grudges and karma could be written off. This death really gave people a lot of insight. In the past, when they saw others die, they had thoughts in their minds. This was completely different from the thoughts of others after they died, and it was a very mysterious scene. All right, let's undo the seal. Seeing that everyone had recovered their spirits, Yang Chun seemed to have thought of something and reminded the four women again. There is no point in sealing anymore. Release the seals and see what you can gain. Chapter 1131. The seal of the four women could be unlocked by themselves at any time in times of crisis. At this time, there was no need to use Yang Chun. They could unlock it by themselves. As soon as the seal was lifted, the surging spiritual power and surging spiritual awareness returned to the four women again. They had traveled for 20 years, lived in Qixia town for 50 years, and then lay in the cemetery for 20 years, adding up to 90 years, nearly 100 years, and their cultivation base had been sealed. As soon as it was unlocked, the four women began to cultivate skillfully. They hadn't used spiritual power for almost 100 years, nor had they used spiritual awareness, but it didn't seem to cause any consequences of their cultivation-based decline. As soon as the women cultivated, they immediately discovered that their spiritual power was even purer than before the seal, and their spiritual awareness had also made good progress. Although it had not yet reached the point of directly upgrading a small grade, the growth of their cultivation base and spiritual awareness was really not discounted. At this point, Yang Chun had said before the seal, because the sealed spiritual power would be concentrated in the tempering of the life source magic weapon, it would be honed and purified by this spontaneous tempering process. In the same way, the spiritual awareness would also improve slightly because it was not used for a long time. It was said beforehand, so the four women didn't feel strange about it at all. What they cared about was how their life source magic weapon had been tempered. Soon, the four women let out a cry of surprise. Even Shi Shanshan, who is usually the quietest and coldest, was no exception. The result of the tempering of the life source magic weapon made the four women indescribably happy and surprised. As early as before going to the demon continent to practice, the four women had already completed their life source magic weapons and began to temper them in the sea of consciousness. Gong Sunling's death had even been completed at that time. After more than 70 years in the demon continent and more than 90 years of experience in the mortal world, Gao Yu Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingshue's life source flying sword had been tempered and could be taken out for use. As for Gong Sunling, the tempering method that Li Cheng taught her had also been tempered by more than half. It seemed that in a few decades, she would be able to complete the initial stage. On average, the tempering of the four women's life source magic weapon had been shortened by at least 50 years. According to the original plan, it would take at least 50 years to achieve the current results. It had to be said that Yang Chen's sealing technique was truly too marvelous. The technique of the immortal world was simply successful in every endeavor when used in the mortal world. The four women could not wait to summon their own life source magic weapon, slowly stroking, slowly appreciating, feeling the wonderful feeling of being one with their own mind. Shi Shanshan's Scarlet Snow Spirit Crystal Flying Sword and Sun Qingshue's Heavenly Thunderwood Flying Sword were both exquisitely crafted. It was refined by Yang Chen himself. Compared to the natal flying sword in their previous life, it was much more brilliant. The combat effectiveness of this natal flying sword alone was more than double that of the previous life. This was not counting the first hundreds of years of tempering time saved, because it was refined in advance. Gao Yu's water and fire dragon horn flying sword was refined by herself, but in the refining process, Yang Chen also participated in the design and helped throughout the process. The dragon horn itself was the best material in the world. Coupled with the personal refining, Gao Yu's natal flying sword was even stronger than that of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. Needless to say, Gong Sunling's Mountain River geographical map, even if there were hundreds of Deshang stage masters, even if Gong Sunling herself did not move and never cultivated, her spiritual power cultivation base would automatically improve. For the same reason, when it came to the endurance of spiritual power, if not counting the help of those spiritual source liquid crystals, even Yang Chen, who cultivated 10 kinds of spiritual power at the same time, would have to admit defeat in front of Gong Sunling. As long as the purification of spiritual power was solved, Gong Sunling was simply the fastest monster among Yang Chen's family. In this regard, Shi Shanshan and Gao Yu, who cultivated hundreds of years earlier than Gong Sunling, were not her opponents. Don't try your natal magic weapons here. Yang Chen saw that the four women were somewhat itchy and hurriedly stopped them. The town above us is Qixia Town. You don't want the town you built by yourself to be destroyed by you, right? Yang Chen said that it was a bit exaggerated for everyone to build it themselves, but Qixia Town was really built from scratch day by day under the eyes of the women. Every day that the town changed, it fell into the eyes of the four women, especially when all the changes in Qixia Town were related to the four women. This feeling was very different from watching the changes in the sect for decades. Under this kind of thinking, Yang Chen said not to let them easily test their life source magic weapons. Although the four women were already curious in their hearts, they all stopped. Don't worry, after leaving, there will be opportunities for your flying sword to open up. Yang Chen smiled and gave the four women a guarantee, and then reminded them, in addition to the natal magic weapons, what other changes are there? My spiritual power is pure. Gao Yu replied quickly. My cultivation base has also improved. Gong Sunling followed Gao Yu and said quickly, my spiritual awareness has improved. Shi Shanshan did not fall behind. My sea of consciousness is also condensed. Sun Qingxue was the last one. The answers of the four women made Yang Chen nod frequently. When they were all finished, he asked again, is there any change in the body? Sisters look younger and more beautiful. Sun Qingxue grabbed the first one this time and replied happily. This is the credit of the eternal youth cultivation method. Yang Chen replied with a smile. As long as you practice hard, you will be able to maintain this state in the future. Even if you feel that it is not perfect enough, you can focus on that part during cultivation, and it can slowly change according to your ideas. Really? Not only Sun Qingxue, but even Cold Plum Fairy Shi Shanshan also asked happily. No woman will feel that they are perfect. There will always be something dissatisfied. This eternal youth cultivation method is so powerful that the four women can't help but be ecstatic. Really, but the process of this change is a bit slow. It may take hundreds of years. Yang Chen has been smiling and gave an affirmative answer. In the eyes of Yang Chen, The four women are already very perfect, and there is no need to change anything at all, as long as they maintain this appearance. But it is undeniable that men and women are very different, and this is one of them. This cultivation method can't be passed on to outsiders. It's the bottom of the box. It can be sold at a high price in the future. After Yang Chun finished, he told the four women. Of course, the four women knew how precious it was, and they all agreed. Such a powerful eternal youth cultivation method, they would not pass it on to outsiders. It seems that the body is stronger. After the ecstasy lasted for a while and slowly calmed down, the four women explored their bodies again. And then Gao Yu said with some uncertainty. Chapter 1132. In the state of the seal, the women were not sure, but now that the seal was released, the women could easily understand their physical condition. Compared to the other benefits, the improvement of physical fitness wasn't too big or too obvious, especially for people like them who had already experienced the lightning tribulation. The improvement in their physique was insignificant. It was no wonder that the women did not discover it at first, and only thought it was another benefit under the seal of spiritual power. Even the cultivation of spiritual power could be improved. Naturally, the improvement of physical fitness was not a problem. Now that Gao Yu said so, the women naturally checked and then confirmed the situation. Could it be the credit of the eternal youth cultivation method? All the women were very puzzled. It has nothing to do with the eternal youth cultivation method, and it has nothing to do with the seal of spiritual power. Yang Chan shook his head with a smile, denied everyone's guess, and then asked, "Don't you think that the people living in Qixia Town are in good health? Isn't it because you secretly arranged a spirit gathering formation?" Gao Yu asked curiously. Before, the four women had always thought that the physical changes of those people in Qixia Town were all because of Yang Chun. Now that Yang Chun said so, it obviously had nothing to do with him. Since it's a worldly experience, I naturally won't do that kind of thing. Yang Chun smiled and shook his head. Moreover, arranging a spirit gathering formation can easily attract other cultivators. I don't have that kind of free time. What is the reason? You'd better say it. Gong Sunling saw that Yang Chun was keeping them in suspense, and she was also a little anxious, so she directly urged. Okay. Yang Chun no longer beat around the bush with everyone, and directly asked, "Don't you feel that there's a trace of human sovereign qi in everyone's body now?" Human sovereign qi? All the women were shocked, and then immediately checked. After everyone checked their bodies, they raised their heads and looked at each other, unable to say a word. Human sovereign qi was a unique kind of emperor's qi in the mortal world, and it was almost impossible for cultivators to have it. Only the ruler of a country would have such an aura. It was impossible for anyone else to have such an aura. However, occasionally, a few extremely lucky cultivators would occasionally use some things that were used by the human emperor, such as the imperial jade seal, to use some of the human emperor's qi. Although it was only the emperor's qi of the mortal world, once it was tainted with the word emperor, it would possess unimaginable power. The effect of the human sovereign's qi was not very powerful compared to those magic treasures that could destroy heaven and earth. It was just that within the scope of the human sovereign's qi, a small realm would be reduced by one level. It sounded simple, but in the eyes of cultivators, dropping a small realm was equivalent to crippling at least 50% of one's cultivation. One must know that the higher one's cultivation was, the more difficult it would be to advance by a small realm. At the Deshang stage, the gap of a small realm was even comparable to the combat effectiveness of a peak Yuanying stage cultivator. This was not all. This human sovereign's qi was useful in the spiritual world and the immortal world. Whether it was the masters of the spiritual world or the immortal world, when they encountered the human sovereign's qi, regardless of cause and effect, they would all be reduced by a small realm. This was the terrifying part. How many cultivators exhausted their minds and tried their best to get a trace of the human sovereign's qi, but they could not get it. The human sovereign's qi was not something that anyone could casually touch. The master who was blessed to the point of defying the natural order had only taken the imperial jade seal that had been passed down for hundreds of generations as his own. The others were similar, So they had the human sovereign's chi, a great killing weapon. Although they had it, they did not dare to use it casually. They would only use it at the moment of life and death, but they also had to pay a high price. This kind of human sovereign's chi that was obtained through external objects would even lower the realm of the owner at the same time. Because the human sovereign's chi was rare, when Yang Chan said that they had a trace of the human sovereign's chi, the four women felt so incredible. How is this possible? However, when they explored their bodies, they found that there was indeed a trace of infinite majesty in their sea of consciousness. They did not explore it too carefully before, but now they found it because of Yang Chen's reminder. This is the human sovereign's chi. Sun Qingshue's divine consciousness stimulated, and that trace of the chi was also stimulated. Suddenly, everyone felt a kind of speechless majesty, as if there was an emperor silently suppressing them, which was very uncomfortable. This is the human sovereign's chi. Yang Chen nodded with a smile and said, however, because everyone's situation is different, the amount of the human sovereign's chi absorbed is not the same, so the results are slightly different. The human sovereign's chi was something that could be seen but not reached. Everyone's luck was different, so it was very natural for them to get different amounts. As a cultivator, of course, this kind of thing could be accepted. What surprised everyone was how Yang Chun let everyone have the human sovereign's chi. Is it because we were buried in this tomb for 20 years? Shi Shan immediately guessed the gist of it. But how is this possible? How could one have a human sovereign's chi by simply faking death and lying in one place for 20 years? If other cultivators heard this news, they would definitely despise it to the extreme. If it was really so easy, then how could the countless ancestors who were looking for the human sovereign's chi endure it? This time, Yang Chen did not speak and just nodded. This time, the four women were even more puzzled. This was too incredible, wasn't it? This kind of shock even exceeded the surprise of having the human sovereign's chi. In fact, everything was calculated in advance. Yang Chen knew that if the four women did not figure out this problem, they would definitely not give up. So he began to explain. Qixia Town was a place that Yang Chen had arranged for them a long time ago. The four women did not think about anything else. They just thought that it looked good and seemed ordinary, so they just stayed here. They had never thought that this was a place of the dragon vein, living here for decades. In fact, they were constantly adapting to the faint trace of the human sovereign's chi that escaped from the dragon vein. Over the past few decades, his body had naturally improved despite not undergoing any cultivation. This was the reason why his physique had naturally improved. The long years of adaptation were ultimately just preparation for the last 20 years. The ordinary tomb that Yang Chun chose, in the eyes of ordinary feng shui masters, was just an ordinary place called the Jade Belt Cave. But in fact, it was where the dragon head of the entire dragon vein was located. During the 20 years of faking death, they were constantly absorbing the pure human sovereign's chi in the dragon vein. Unconsciously, the women had the human sovereign's chi that made countless cultivators crazy. Chapter 1133. You mean this is where the head of the dragon vein is? After listening to Yang Chen's simple description, all the women were stunned, and it was Sun Qingxue who asked with some disbelief. Before yesterday, yes. Yang Chen nodded without hesitation, but he still added an attribute to limit it to before yesterday. The dragon vein was the place where the chi of the human emperor in the world was gathered, and it had always been uncertain. Under normal circumstances, it would not stay in one place for more than 20 years. This was common sense, and the four women obviously knew this common sense. Coupled with the fact that their family had been lying here for 20 years being nourished by the dragon vein, if they still could not figure out what was going on, it would really be a bit of a waste of their geniuses. However, because the dragon vein was the convergence of the human emperor's chi, even cultivators, even if they cultivated to the peak of the Mahayana realm, it was impossible to see the location of the dragon vein, let alone accurately find the dragon vein and use it completely for 20 years. This was simply impossible. However, the changes in their bodies made the four women believe that the impossible had happened to them. The only explanation was that Yang Chun did not know where to find the exact location of the dragon vein. When the four women looked at their husband again, their eyes seemed to be looking at a monster. Countless cultivators could not figure out the location of the dragon vein, but Yang Chun easily included it in his own plan. How crazy would it be to let those people know? However, it wasn't the first time that her husband had displayed such an incredible ability. If he wanted to go crazy, those people would have gone crazy over and over again. They would have turned into lunatics. Yang Chun also laughed in his heart. Others did not know where the dragon vein was in the mortal world, but there were detailed records in the heavenly court. In his previous life, when Yang Chun had nothing to do, he often looked through such boring things. It was not surprising to add such a link to his own plan. How do we use the human emperor's qi in our bodies? Shan Shan quickly calmed down and asked quickly. For the time being, Shan Shan, you, and Xiao Xue's Ren Huang qi can only protect yourselves. Yang Chun shook his head regretfully and said, if someone else uses the Ren Huang qi against you, you won't be affected at all. Why? Sun Qingxue was a little unbalanced. Everyone has been lying in the grave for 20 years. Why is Gao Yu and Gong Sunling different from them? Because you don't have any Dragon Clan magic treasures on you. Yang Chun sighed and said with a little pity, the magic treasures of the Dragon Clan are the best magic treasures that can contain the Ren Huang qi. Both the Dragon Horn Flying Sword and the Mountain River Geographical Map have absorbed a lot of human sovereign qi, so their attacks will have the characteristics of human sovereign qi. Yang Chun got a lot of things from the Dragon Clan's treasure house, but not all of them were given to his women. Gao Yu's Dragon Horn Flying Sword and Gong Sunling's Mountain River Geographical Map were prepared a long time ago. At that time, Yang Chun had not yet played with Shan Shan and Sun Qingxue, so naturally, he did not prepare for them. The rest of the things obtained from the Dragon Clan's treasure house were used by Yang Chun himself. The 5-element hook, except for Yang Chun, no one else could use it. The sea-pouring jasper cup and the shuttle were not compatible with the attributes of the two women. The dragon tower was used by Xiao Tian, leaving only the golden bell and the gourd. The golden bell was of the metal attribute, and the gourd was of the wood attribute, which was suitable for Shan Shan and Sun Qingxue, but neither of them were offensive magic treasures. The golden bell was defensive, and the gourd, needless to say, was just a container. Naturally, all of these Dragon Clan magic treasures have absorbed enough Emperor's qi. At this point, Yang Chun would not favor one over the other, and directly took out both the golden bell and the gourd and placed them in front of the two women. The golden bell is excellent for protection, and Shan Shan should be suitable. However, it is not your life source magic weapon. You can only find a way to integrate the golden bell with your life source flying sword after you arrive in the spiritual world or the immortal world. Yang Chun showed the golden bell and said to Shan Shan. The reason why it was said that it could only be integrated in the spiritual world or the immortal world was that no matter who it was, their cultivation base was not enough to move the golden bell. And even if it was in the immortal world, it was estimated that there was only one possibility. The powerful magic weapon refined by the Dragon Clan was not something that anyone could think of. The defensive magic weapon is not suitable for my swordsmanship. Sure, Shan Shan naturally knew the power of the golden bell, but her swordsmanship had always been indomitable. If she got the golden bell, it would make her heart worry, and she would no longer be able to maintain that kind of bright sword heart. For the golden bell, Sure Shan Shan directly refused. Yang Chun did not take it out before because of this reason. Now she was afraid that Sure Shan Shan and Sun Qingxue would have some ideas and feel that she was unfair, so she took it out. Unexpectedly, Sure Shan Shan had a clear direction for her own cultivation. In the face of this kind of Dragon Clan magic weapon with the Emperor's qi, she also refused it without hesitation. It was no wonder that Sure Shan Shan had a clear direction for her own cultivation. In the face of this kind of Dragon Clan magic weapon with the Emperor's qi, she refused it without hesitation. Little Shui, the gourd has no attack power, only some wine and spiritual liquid of origin. Yang Chun pushed the gourd in front of Sun Qingxue and motioned for her to put it away. Sun Qingxue picked up the gourd, held it in her hand for a long time, and returned it to Yang Chun. A magic weapon without the ability to attack is meaningless with the Emperor's qi. The two women all refused the magic weapons of the Dragon Clan, which made Yang Chun a little surprised. It was understandable for sure Shan, but Sun Qingxue's performance was so obvious that she did not take the gourd, which made Yang Chun look at her in a different light. Husband, I don't care. Sister Gao and Sister Gongsun both have magic weapons with the Emperor's qi, but Sister Shan and I don't have them. You are biased. Although she refused the two magic weapons of the Dragon Clan, Sun Qingxue still stayed in Yang Chen's arms and kept acting like a spoiled child, looking unbalanced. The other three women all saw the intention of Sun Qingxue. It was clear that she wanted their husband to compensate for the imbalance of not having the Emperor's qi. No one said anything. They all looked at Yang Chun with a smile to see what else he had to offer. There was no other way. Their husband was becoming more and more unfathomable. He could even get the Emperor's qi, a peerless treasure, through the experience of the mortal world. They had to put a little pressure on him to see what benefits he could get. Anyway, he was their husband, and it was normal for him to compensate his wife. Well, I won't be biased. Yang Chen did not know whether to laugh or cry because of Sun Qingxue's entanglement. Looking at the posture of the other three women, he finally had no choice but to admit defeat. I have already prepared it for you. It depends on whether you can bear the hardship. As he said this, Yang Chun opened his palm and presented the thing in his palm to everyone. Chapter 1134. In the hands of Yang Chun, there was a small green bead, like an emerald, spinning around. The bead was very round, but there was no spiritual power overflowing, so people did not understand what it was. What is this? Sun Qingxue asked curiously. As she spoke, she reached out and picked up the bead. She held it in front of her eyes and observed it carefully for a while. She was a little uncertain and asked Seed. Yes, Seed. Yang Chun sat on the coffin, holding Sun Qingxue, and replied, What seed? When everyone heard that this was a seed, they knew that it must be related to Sun Qingxue. No one asked much. Only Sun Qingxue frowned and asked, What is the use? A seed that can help you improve your cultivation. Yang Chun replied with a smile, and then suddenly asked Little Shui, Are you afraid of suffering? Not afraid. In front of the other three women, even if Sun Qingxue was really afraid, it was impossible to say it. Moreover, if it was just a seed, Sun Qingxue would not be bitter. Do you know why Elder Hua is only in the early Deshang stage, but the reason why his combat power is extraordinary? Yang Chun smiled and asked everyone. Elder Hua was the master of Sun Qingxue. Her story has almost spread throughout the world of cultivators. Everyone knows that she once fought against the blood demon Vine alone for hundreds of years. Elder Hua has such achievements because he has fought against the blood demon Vine alone for hundreds of years and his 100 years of life and death experience. Sure Shan quickly added on the side, then looked at the green seed and asked with some concern, Husband, you don't want little Shui to experience the suffering of Elder Hua again, do you? When Yang Chun rescued Elder Hua, Sun Qingxue was present, but not in the small courtyard, but outside with Sect Master Lu. The situation of that year was still vivid in her mind. When Sun Qingxue thought of the appearance of her master being sucked by the blood demon vine layer by layer, she felt a chill. No, the scene of the blood phantom vine was so shocking that even Sun Qingxue could not help but say no. Not to mention the taste of being sucked by the blood demon vine. Just the situation was frightening. Sun Qingxue could hardly imagine her whole body covered with blood demon vines. Don't worry, I don't want my wife to become so ugly. Yang Chun could feel the slight trembling of Sun Qingxue's delicate body in his arms, and the hand around her slender waist tightened a little, giving Sun Qingxue a little comfort. I just want you to have one more experience, and at the same time, one more way to cultivate. Hearing Yang Chen's words, the women felt a little calmer in their hearts. Sun Qingxue's mood also eased a little, but her body was still trembling slightly, holding the green seed, and asked, What should I do? This is a seed of the demonized blue jade blood phantom vine, which is a fusion of 3 vines. Yang Chun quickly introduced. Among them, the blue jade vine could detoxify 99% of the poisons in the world, and the blood phantom vine is, needless to say, naturally it is sucking blood. In addition, there is the weakest kind of vine, which is the demonized demon vine living on the demon continent. Whether it is the blue jade vine or the blood phantom vine, they are extremely precious vines. Elder Hua was absorbed by the blood phantom vine in order to get a blood phantom vine. Hearing that this was actually a fusion of the seed of the blue jade vine and the blood phantom vine, in terms of preciousness alone, Sun Qingxue was naturally surprised. What puzzled the 4 women was that the name of the demonized demon vine, of course, the 4 women had heard of it, but Yang Chun said that it was the weakest kind of vine. They didn't know where this came from. However, Yang Chun always has his own reasons, and I believe that Yang Chun will say it without asking. The reason why the demonized demon vine is the weakest is that the blue jade blood phantom vine only fused with the seed of the demonized demon vine and did not fuse with the main body, so it is relatively the weakest. Sure enough, the next is Yang Chen's explanation. Hearing this explanation, the women were all stunned. A mature body that has grown up in a seed, of course, can't be compared. However, don't underestimate this demon vine seed that has been fused. It was collected from a second-grade human immortal demonized demon vine. Yang Chun emphasized the importance of the demonized demon vine. Even if it is just a seed, it can't be underestimated. All the women were stunned for a while. Yang Chun told them about his experience in the demon continent, but he never said how powerful the things he dealt with were. Hearing that it was a second-grade human immortal demonized demon vine, this kind of thing that has surpassed the cultivation of all people in the mortal world, unexpectedly appeared in the mortal world, the women couldn't help but be surprised. What you have to do is to refine this demonized blue jade blood phantom vine seed, then plant it in your own body and nourish it with your own flesh and blood spirit power. Yang Chun hugged Sun Qingxue and said a little hard in his heart. Everyone knows what it would be like to nourish such a plant with their own flesh and blood spirit power, even if it was a seed that has been refined. At most, it would be obedient, but the suffering that should be suffered would not be reduced at all. With the blue jade vine, the blood phantom vine itself can be suppressed, and it will not be as terrifying as Elder Hua in the past. Yang Chun comforted Sun Qingxue in a low voice, and at the same time advised her, but you will also experience the taste of Elder Hua in the past, and the benefits to you are self-evident. And Elder Hua had the same experience in the past. I believe he can give you detailed advice. This kind of cultivation method could almost be said to be in the same vein as Elder Hua wanting. Elder Hua has his own 100 years of experience, and naturally can guide Sun Qingxue in this regard. Yang Chen's arrangement basically took into account the factors of Sun Qingxue's master and the sect. In the past 200 years, Yang Chun has basically arranged the cultivation of the 4 women. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling are fine. They are all people of Chunyang Palace, and there will be no complaints. But Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan are different. They have their own sect, and they always have to consider the feelings of the sect. Especially Sun Qingxue is different from Shi Shanshan. Shi Shanshan's master Song Huan is weak in the sect. Basically, Shi Shanshan mainly cultivates by herself. Sun Qingxue's master is a very strong elder. If this is always the case, it will definitely make Elder Hua dissatisfied. In this way, although Sun Qingxue suffers a little, it makes Elder Hua more emotionally acceptable. Of course, his own disciple should be guided by himself, so it is justifiable. I believe that under the guidance of Elder Hua, you can make rapid progress in just a few decades. Yang Chun continued, this is a kind of spiritual power sharpening in itself. I believe you can persist. Don't refuse. Seeing that Sun Qingxue wanted to refuse, Yang Chun directly blocked her words in her throat. Doing this is just the first step. Chapter 1135. It was not so easy for a young and beautiful female cultivator like Sun Qingxue to cultivate with vines crawling all over her body. Although she knew that Yang Chun was doing this for her own good, Sun Qingxue still subconsciously wanted to refuse. She believed that Elder Hua did not want his disciple to suffer what she had suffered in the past. Elder Hua doted on Sun Qingxue so much that he certainly did not want her to suffer. However, Yang Chun said that this was only the first step, which made Sun Qingxue unable to say anything. She could only stare at Yang Chun with slightly pitiful eyes, waiting for him to continue. Don't pretend to be pitiful. Yang Chun smiled and gently pinched Sun Qingxue's pretty face. There's a reason for you to do this. In addition to going through a lot of suffering and tempering, the most important thing for you is to completely master this demonized blue jade blood phantom vine. Especially the part that focuses on the demonized vine, you must completely control it. Do I have to use the demonic qi to temper my cultivation all the time? Sun Qingxue still had a slightly pleading expression, which made people feel pity for her. Especially when she asked in a low voice with this expression, it was even more so. Of course, the demonic qi can appear at will. Yang Chun shook his head and directly let everyone give up the idea of using the demonic qi. If you don't want to be regarded as a demon, you can only use the demonic qi to temper it here. At other times, don't even think about it. At this point, all the women knew what Yang Chun said was right, so they did not refute it and nodded silently. Then why do you focus on controlling the part of the demonized vine? Do you have to do this? Husband. Sun Qingxue still had a little bit of resistance in her heart and asked in anticipation. It was about her own decades of suffering. Although Sun Qingxue cultivated hard, she would try not to experience that kind of suffering if she could avoid it. Unless it was a last resort, she was really unwilling to let her famous dancing snow fairy become a vine-entangling tree. Not only Sun Qingxue, but the other three women also felt that it was too cruel to treat Sun Qingxue. It was just that Yang Chun had been very serious from the beginning until now, and did not look like he was joking, so the three women forcibly held back from asking. But seeing that Yang Chun did not seem to be accommodating at all, Gaoyu had a plead for Sun Qingxue. Yang Chun, Xiao Shui doesn't know any better. What she said just now wasn't intentional. How about you don't let Xiao Shui suffer like this? Gaoyu thought that Yang Chun made Sun Qingxue suffer a little because Sun Qingxue said that Yang Chun was biased, so she had to help Sun Qingxue say something good. As soon as Gaoyu opened her mouth, Sun Qingxue did not dare to interrupt, but her little head kept nodding. It was as if Gaoyu had said what Yang Chun was thinking. At the same time, she still had that kind of pitiful look on her face, begging her husband. This time, Gaoyu did not call Yang Chun husband, but Yang Chun, which showed that she was taking out her master's identity to talk about this. In this regard, Yang Chun had to consider it. Although I am not so good, I am not so narrow-minded, right? Seeing Gaoyu being so formal, Yang Chun could not help but smile bitterly. Xiao Shui, are you really not willing? Yang Chun took back the green bead from Sun Qingxue's fingers and asked with a smile. Seeing that Yang Chun seemed to have the intention to let go, Sun Qingxue was overjoyed and quickly nodded her head. As long as she did not become a tree wrapped in vines, it was fine. Husband, Xiao Shui was wrong. Xiao Shui will be obedient in the future, so don't use this seed, okay? Striking the iron while it was hot, Sun Qingxue immediately began to use this opportunity to act like a spoiled child, admitting her mistake and saying good words, hoping to dispel Yang Chen's idea. What do you think? Yang Chun was a little funny, so he turned to the other two women and asked for their opinions. It's good to go through some hardships. Your cultivation will improve a lot. Sure, Shanshan definitely supported it. She was a cultivation fanatic, so of course she would support it. Hearing Sure Shanshan's words, Sun Qingxue's face immediately collapsed, as she turned to Gong Sunling pitifully. Don't suffer like that. Gong Sunling also could not bear to see her sister suffer, so she could not help but plead. Okay then. Yang Chun put away the green seed, then don't suffer like that. Husband is the best. Sun Qingxue was overjoyed, and in ecstasy, she directly hugged Yang Chun and kissed Yang Chen's face, and cheered. Seeing this, Gaoyu and Gong Sunling could not help but shake their heads. It was not that they could not bear to see Yang Chun and Sun Qingxue being intimate. It was because Sun Qingxue was the youngest, and she was somewhat spoiled. After a while, you still have to ask husband to give you that seed. Why bother? Sure, Shan Shan also shook her head, but the words she said had a different feeling. When did you refuse the arrangement of husband? Sun Qingxue, who was cheering, suddenly froze, and even Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were a little stunned. Everyone thought about it carefully and found that what Sure Shan Shan said seemed to be true. When did they refuse Yang Chen's arrangement? Even Gao Yu, who had a fire attribute, eventually cultivated a water attribute cultivation method, right? It was later proved that Gao Yu's acquired water spirit root was full value, and Yang Chen's arrangement was not wrong at all. In this case, how could Yang Chun give up halfway when he took out the seed of the demonized Jasper Blood Phantom vine so solemnly this time? Not to mention anything else, the seed alone was enough to make countless people fight for it. Using such a seed to stimulate the body was only the first step of Yang Chen's requirements. What was the next step? It sounded like such a big thing. Could it really be so easy to refuse? Suddenly, the pitiful expression appeared on Sun Qingxue's face again, like a puppy who had done something wrong. Husband. Sun Qingxue's pitiful voice. Ordinary people would definitely feel sorry for her after hearing it, and they would no longer demand the owner of the voice. Unfortunately, Yang Chun was an exception. Shan Shan understands me, husband. Yang Chun gave Sure Shan Shan a smile, then turned back to face Sun Qingxue and asked again, You really don't want to use it? Yes. Sun Qingxue kept nodding. Alas. Yang Chun shook his head and seemed to have given up, but he said with regret, Your husband, still have the main body of a second-grade earth, immortal demonic vine. If you can absorb and fuse with it, I believe it will be of great help to your cultivation. But since you don't want to, then forget it. As soon as these words came out, Sun Qingxue was stunned for a while. The pitiful expression lasted for less than a few breaths, and was replaced by an anxious look. I want it, husband. I want it. Give me that seed. Chapter 1136. Sun Qingxue's performance made the other three women speechless and shook their heads for a while. At first, she refused to do anything, and even Gao Yu put on the air of a master to intercede with Yang Chun. Now she didn't need to be urged, and she immediately took the initiative to ask for it. They really didn't know what to say. However, the women were really speechless at the performance of their husband. One was because he had already paved the way for everyone quietly, and the other was as Sure Shan Shan said, everyone had no reason to refuse him. The true body of a second-grade earth, immortal demonized vine, it was really scary to say it out loud. Only now did the four women know what kind of horror Yang Chun faced when he was in the center of the demon continent. Thinking that they only worked together to resist the attacks of some Mahayana-stage demonized beasts, it seemed that the gap between them and their husband was getting farther and farther. This kind of emotion was easy to appear. It couldn't be helped, the second-grade Earth Immortal, which had exceeded everyone's imagination. It was an existence that could easily kill all the masters of the 5 major sects at any time. It was actually collected by Yang Chun. What did this mean? How could there be such a monster in the mortal world? It's not so dangerous. When I went there, the ultimate demonized vine was already on the verge of death. I just picked up a ready-made bargain. Yang Chun looked at the expressions of the 4 women and knew what they were thinking, and hurriedly enlightened them. He didn't tell the 4 women about the details before because he was afraid that they would have any bad thoughts. At the critical moment of cultivation, Yang Chun didn't want them to have any bad thoughts, especially that kind of depressed mood, which was a taboo for cultivation. Having said that, the women still felt that the gap between them and Yang Chun was getting bigger and bigger. However, this was the time when the difference between a genius and a mediocre person was reflected. We will catch up with you. Sure Shan Shan was the first to jump out and directly announced her determination with this sentence. Next, Gao Yu, Gong Sunling, and Sun Qingxue all had the kind of unyielding posture. For the time being, Sun Qingxue was comforted. With this second-grade, earthly immortal demonized vine, Sun Qingxue reckoned that she wouldn't have any free time until she ascended. Moreover, there was no guarantee that she could completely integrate with it. It was possible that after she ascended to the spiritual realm and possessed the cultivation of a human immortal, she could truly integrate and absorb the power of this demonized vine. Needless to say, this kind of cultivation speed and efficiency would definitely make countless people's eyeballs explode in shock. Who didn't have eyes and dared to provoke Sun Qingxue. It would definitely not end well. Needless to say, Gao Yu cultivated in both water and fire, and integrated with the dragon horn flying sword that had absorbed the aura of the human sovereign. As long as she attacked, her opponent would immediately drop by a small realm. Coupled with the power of the dragon horn flying sword, coupled with the experience of the demon continent, even in the face of a master of the peak Deshang stage, she would not be at a disadvantage. Not to mention Gong Sunling. Her cultivation base was the highest among everyone now. But because her spiritual power was somewhat impure, she was concentrating on tempering the mountain river geographical map and condensing spiritual power. He believed that when this step was completed, with the help of hundreds of Deshang stage masters and the mountain river geographical map, Gong Sunling would definitely be able to walk sideways in the mortal world. Finally, there was only one Shi Shanshan left, and it seemed that she didn't seem to have made much progress. Of course, this was also relative. Compared with anyone at the same level, Shi Shanshan's combat effectiveness was outstanding, except for Yang Chen. Things have reached this point. Sun Qingxue also thoroughly understood that Yang Chen was not so narrow-minded, and immediately began to complain for Shi Shanshan. Husband, Sister Shanshan is the only one who doesn't have your special guidance. You can't be biased. Sun Qingxue talked about favoritism again, making it difficult for Yang Chen to refuse. Only Sun Qingxue was suitable to say this. Anyway, Shi Shanshan, a competitive person, would never say that he was biased in front of Yang Chen and then ask for benefits. I've already prepared it. I don't need you to tell me. Yang Chen smiled and scratched Sun Qingxue's little jade nose and said dotingly. Hearing Yang Chen's words, Sun Qingxue immediately succeeded. She secretly gave Shi Shanshan an evil look and grabbed the seed of the demonized jasper bloodvine from Yang Chen's hand. She hid it like a treasure, and her face was full of joy. Like Xiaoxue, go back to the sect and concentrate on cultivation for a few decades, and then I'll go to a place with you to take samples. Yang Chen said to Shi Shanshan. Anyway, before you go to the spiritual realm, you don't have to worry about not having anything to cultivate. Thank you, husband. Shi Shanshan was calm. She nodded at Yang Chen and said this, and then said no more. What is it? Sun Qingxue began to be curious again. She pulled Yang Chen's arm and asked. You don't have to think too much. It's not good for anyone to know in advance. Yang Chen didn't say it this time, but just smiled and refused. In the future, except for the dual cultivation method, this is the last time I will interfere with your cultivation. After taking care of the 4 people, Yang Chen said to everyone very seriously. Yang Chen's statement made everyone stunned. For a long time, everyone seemed to be used to Yang Chen's arrangements. As long as they followed Yang Chen's words, there was basically no big problem. Now that Yang Chen suddenly said this, the 4 women had an indescribable feeling. In fact, each of you has your own persistence and direction. I have interfered so much in the early stage, which is already my limit. In the future, you can only rely on yourselves. Yang Chen said very seriously this time. Even if it's the master who leads you into the door. Cultivation is in the hands of the individual. Without my interference, you will develop better. I look forward to the performance of your geniuses. Let me be proud to be your husband. In just a few words, Yang Chen's own thoughts were clearly explained, and, at the same time, the mood of the 4 women was raised to a point of anger. It sounded good to let Yang Chen be proud to be their husband. Are we going to be separated for a while? Sun Qingxue was excited, but she also heard some of Yang Chen's words, and couldn't help but ask. We have been together for more than 100 years, almost 200 years. We are all people of our own sect, and we always have to make some contributions to the sect. Gao Yu understood Yang Chen's thoughts, and directly said these words for Yang Chun. You can't forget the cultivation of the sect just because you are married. Gao Yu had always been the big sister, and everyone believed in her words. Especially this time, Gao Yu was actually expressing it on behalf of Yang Chun, and the women had no objections. However, as Gao Yu said, everyone had been together for 200 years, and they had long been used to each other's existence. They were naturally very reluctant to part with each other. Even when they were separated by death in Qixia town, there was no such sorrow of separation. There was no banquet in the world that did not come to an end, and everyone had to be separated for a short time after all. Chapter 1137. Don't be so sad. We have a long time in the future. Yang Chun was relatively more open-minded. As a man, he was naturally not as sentimental as a woman. Seeing that the four women were a little unhappy, he still said a good thing to make the four women happy. In fact, we have slept here for 20 years, and there are still some other benefits. Yang Chen's words attracted everyone's attention. What benefits? Gong Sunling asked casually. We 5 masters of the Yuanying stage have slept on the dragon vein for 20 years. Not to mention that we have absorbed the Emperor's qi, it will also bring great blessings to the future generations of the family. Yang Chun said with a smile, at least we can bring 200 years of the Emperor's destiny to the future generations of the family. In the future, there will be a day when the future generations of the family will sit on the throne. Compared with the ordinary good feng shui being buried on the head of the dragon vein, it cannot be described as the ancestral grave emitting smoke, but the ancestral grave setting off fireworks. With such good feng shui, the future generations will naturally have deep blessings. The 200 years of the Emperor's destiny is still less than what Yang Chun said. Speaking of Yang Chun, he has no plans to have children now, and the 4 women are the same. Usually, when cultivators have children, most of them have children because of their limited qualifications and can't continue to go further, so they will leave behind descendants. Generally speaking, female cultivators think more that the mother will have children because of the value of the son. The 4 women naturally have no problems with qualifications, so there is no need to consider the problem of having children at all. Even if they want to have children, according to Yang Chun, it will be after they ascend to the immortal world. Otherwise, if they have children, everyone's experience in the mortal world will be more perfect. The separation is imminent. Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue are particularly reluctant. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling will definitely return to Chunyang Palace with Yang Chun, and they can be together at any time, but the 2 women have no such opportunity. Knowing that it wasn't easy for them, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling gave the last part of the party to Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. The 2 girls expressed their sorrow of parting without hesitation. Even when Yang Chun sent everyone back to their respective sect, the 2 girls were unwilling to part with Yang Chun. Even during the double cultivation, they were together and they slept together, which made Yang Chun enjoy the taste of gentleness. It must be said that the 90 years of worldly experience arranged by Yang Chun was simply too effective. The symptoms of the killing syndrome accumulated in the demon continent before we're gone. After living with ordinary people for decades, they were able to control their own actions at any time, anywhere, and with a calm mind tempered by ordinary people. The power of madness was terrifying, but the power of complete control was even more frightening. The 4 women had now entered a higher level of power. This time, they sent Sun Qingxue back to Blue Cloud Sect first. Under the guidance of Yang Chun, Sun Qingxue had planted the demonized blue jade blood phantom vine. However, under her control, the vines were only on a small scale. Only when Sun Qingxue was willing would they drill out of her body a little. Elder Hua was shocked when he saw Sun Qingxue's state. He thought that Yang Chun did not take good care of Sun Qingxue and almost fell out with Yang Chun on the spot. Sun Qingxue cleverly said that she wanted to follow the old path of her master, which made Elder Hua accept it with heartache and joy, but he still held Sun Qingxue in his arms and loved her very much, almost calling her sweetheart. Naturally, everyone was very tight-lipped about the ultimate demonized demon vine. This was the secret of the demon continent, and naturally no one who had sworn a heart demon oath would disclose it. Elder Hua was very satisfied that his disciple could follow his old path and at the same time could control the blood phantom vine. He immediately took Sun Qingxue to retreat and taught her the way to fight against the blood phantom vine. At this point, no one had a better say than Elder Hua. Leaving Sun Qingxue in Blue Cloud Sect, Yang Chun took the three women straight to Shi Shanshan. This time, on the way, Shi Shanshan dominated Yang Chun. The cold plum fairy, who was usually cold and elegant, hated that she could not integrate with Yang Chun during this period of time and was reluctant to be separated for a moment. In the next few decades, the main direction of Shi Shanshan's efforts was to strengthen the control of her life source flying sword. The life source flying sword that had just been tempered still needed to be further perfected in order to become a better life source magic weapon than the one in her previous life. Of course, purifying spiritual power and improving cultivation base were indispensable. According to Yang Chen's estimation, it would take at least 30 years for Shi Shanshan to be able to withstand the power of the thing Yang Chen said. Before that, don't even think about it. There was no way the defects in the realm of cultivation base could not be made up for by anything. When Shi Shanshan returned from the demon continent, her performance in the sect was very eye-catching, seriously injuring senior sister Li Jiqi in one move, seriously injuring Elder Lu Ziwei in one move, knocking down Elder Bei Xuanyu in 2 moves, and later fighting with Elder Min Huafeng in a tie, which had already made the sect stunned. This time, Shi Shanshan would definitely be able to get the focus of the sect's training. At this point, Yang Chun had no doubt. He only hoped that in the future, Shi Shanshan would be better than in her previous life. After sending Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue back to their respective sect, Yang Chun took Gao Yu and Gong Sunling and slowly returned to Chunyang Palace. These days, Yang Chun had been taking care of the 2 women. Only now did Yang Chun have the opportunity to carefully explore the changes that had taken place in his body. Needless to say, the magic weapons of the Dragon Clan, the Golden Bell, the 5-element rope hook, the sea-pouring jasper cup, the gourd, and the flying shuttle had all absorbed enough of the human emperor's qi. The benefits that Gao Yu and Gong Sunling had occupied, Yang Chun did not fall behind. But there was another thing that the 4 women could not match. When Yang Chun was pretending to be dead, the white dragon in his sea of consciousness was absorbing the human emperor's qi like a whale. That white dragon was originally Long Wei, formed after Yang Chun absorbed the dragon Yuan when he was in the Dragon Palace. It was originally very majestic. Once it was released, even if the cultivation base was much higher than Yang Chen's, they would feel that kind of terrifying majesty. Now that it had absorbed enough human emperor's qi, that kind of majesty had become more and more terrifying. Even the masters of the Deshang stage in front of Yang Chun, it was estimated that there would be an involuntary feeling of wanting to kneel down. It was a kind of awe that came from the bottom of their hearts, and their status was directly lowered by a head, far more than a small realm of cultivation base could compare. After the entire mortal world experience, Yang Chun completed at least tens of thousands of second-grade inner sensing pills and hundreds of second-grade questioning inner heart pills. At the same time, during this time, Yang Chun also absorbed and merged hundreds of kinds of demonic fire seeds below the 5th grade, and the power of the Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire was even more terrifying. Because Yang Chun did not seal his spirit power, during these years, Yang Chun was almost constantly condensing and purifying his spirit power. Now Yang Chen's spirit power, although the quality was still not comparable to Li Cheng's, but compared to a few decades ago, it had at least doubled. Chapter 1138. After planting a seed of ambition for Taishimen, Yang Chun did not contact Li Liheng much in the following days. He casually found a reason that Senior Lu Fengzi was going to retreat for a while, and it was easy to dodge it. Because there was no consumption of the spatial spiritual sense cultivation method, Li Liheng's remaining spirit congealing pills could basically meet his need for 2 pills a month. In 50 years, even without waiting for Yang Chun and the others to return from the demon continent, Li Liheng's old illness could be considered to have been cured. At least for a very long time, Li Liheng had not fainted for no reason. This time has lasted for almost 100 years, which fully shows that Yang Chen's spirit-congealing pills are really effective. At this point, Yang Chen's credibility was still enough. If he said it would be taken for 50 years, it would be 50 years. The senior executives of Taishaman were very happy about this. After Li Liheng's hidden dangers were eliminated, he could only improve his own cultivation base in the future, and then he could communicate with the seniors in the spiritual world without worry. There was still a batch of spirit-congealing pills left, but no one dared to use them at will this time. The core senior executives all understood that Li Liheng and Senior Lu Fengzi would now consume at least 10 pills. If he wanted to communicate with Senior Lu Fengzi in the future, he would need the help of spirit-congealing pills. In this regard, Li Liheng also consulted Senior Lu Fengzi, and the explanation given by Senior Lu Fengzi was that the spiritual awareness cultivation base of the two sides was too different, which led to this. This situation seems to be aggravated in the future, because it seems that Senior Lu Fengzi's spiritual awareness growth is much faster than Li Liheng's. Li Liheng also relayed this idea to the core senior executives, but the core senior executives did not have a good way. When it came to cultivation, one had to take one step at a time. Anyone who wanted to take a shortcut would have to pay a higher price in the end. Li Liheng was clear about the meaning of the senior executives, but it did not mean that he could accept the status quo. In fact, Senior Lu Fengzi once pointed out that the Freedom Demon Heart Sutra seemed to be able to accelerate Li Liheng's spiritual awareness cultivation base. Li Liheng was not too presumptuous. He just concentrated on cultivation. It had to be said that those who could enter the Taishaman were all relatively good aptitudes. In the past 100 years, Li Liheng had successfully passed the Thunder Tribulation and entered the early Yuanying realm. Yang Lan has been close to Li Liheng these years, the nominal brother-in-law of the young sect master, and the popular person around him. This identity finally let him taste the kind of high and mighty taste. Although it was just a false feeling of being a fox borrowing the tiger's might, this feeling was truly wonderful. Compared to being bullied by fellow disciples like a stray dog in the past, this feeling was incomparable. Over the past 100 years, Yang Lan's cultivation has also improved day by day, and he has entered the peak Jidan stage. It seems that he is only one step away from entering the ranks of the Yuanying stage. Li Liheng's behavior seemed normal, but he couldn't hide it from the person next to him. Yang Lan was keenly aware of this. Thus, one time when she was serving Li Liheng a drink, Yang Lan skillfully guided Li Liheng, allowing him to speak his mind that he didn't dare to speak normally. The cause that Yang Chan planted in the past had finally borne fruit, and it was still after 100 years. No one would doubt that it had anything to do with Senior Lu Fengzi, and even Li Liheng himself would not realize what he had said. He was worried that his spiritual awareness cultivation base would not catch up with Senior Lu Fengzi in the spiritual world. The spatial spiritual awareness cultivation method, these incredible things made Yang Lan listen to it like a book from heaven, and he was shocked to the extreme. He didn't believe it, but the performance of the core high-level members of the Taishaman made Yang Lan believe that it was true. In particular, Li Liheng spat out the truth after drinking this time, and even said a shocking news about the heaven and earth infinite essence suppression formation, which made Yang Lan almost faint with excitement. This big formation was so powerful that it could turn the entire Taishaman's mountain gate into a cultivation resort. What was particularly special was that the special formation I could directly raise a person's cultivation base from the lowest to the ascension stage. This kind of thing, if it wasn't said by Li Liheng, Yang Lan wouldn't believe it even if she was beaten to death. But as the person next to Li Liheng, Yang Lan was clear about some high-level movements. In the past 100 years, it seemed that the resources provided by the disciples of the sect had been shrinking, and the Taishaman were quietly collecting a large number of materials. All of this was simply a naked indication that the high-level members were preparing for this heaven and earth infinite essence suppression formation, and the preparatory work seemed to have been basically completed. After Li Liheng said all his thoughts, the whole person was indescribably relaxed, and it seemed that the demons in his heart that had accumulated for many years were gone. After waking up, his cultivation base and state of mind had a significant improvement, and the cultivation base of his spiritual awareness had also increased slightly. Yang Lan had always been calm. After hearing these news, she never showed any abnormalities. The only thing was that she served Li Liheng more and more wholeheartedly, and also let Li Liheng taste the pride of a man who had never failed a woman, and he was more and more favored. After being careful for a long time, Yang Lan finally found a chance to tell her brother, Yang Lan, about this. Yang Lan's purpose was also very clear, to help Li Liheng satisfy. And at that time, he could also secretly enjoy the special formation eye. This time, Yang Lan was like a treasure, and finally made up his mind to help the young sect master solve his troubles. The key to the solution was naturally the Devil Heart Sutra. Others were not allowed to easily access this Devil Heart Sutra, but who was Yang Lan? He was a popular person around the young sect master. When the core elder was not in the scripture's pavilion, he could access a cultivation method that had been put for many years. Wasn't that easy? This Devil Heart Sutra was not so easy to cultivate. It still needed a lot of preparation work. In particular, it needed some female cultivators, and their cultivation base could not be too low, at least higher than Li Liheng's cultivation base. This condition was simply impossible for Yang Lan. But Yang Lan soon discovered that the author of the Free Demon Heart Sutra seemed to have left behind a set of contact information for his descendants. Maybe after so many years of development and changes, the Free Demon Heart Sutra has changed better, and there might be a simpler way to use it. After Yang Lan studied for a long time, he finally decided to find the descendants of this Devil Dao predecessor. Naturally, the most convenient way was to buy news from the Drunken Immortal house. Anyway, it was just the whereabouts of a family. The Drunken Immortal house would be happy to accept this business. The reason why he looked for the Drunken Immortal house, Yang Lan had another consideration. The matter of being bullied by the Drunken Immortal house before had to be settled. Chapter 1139. With Yang Lan's current popularity in Taishaman, it was naturally easy to find out the culprit who designed him in the past. It seemed that everything was secretly arranged by the Drunken Immortal house. However, Yang Lan also knew that the Drunken Immortal house was at most an executor, and the real behind-the-scenes manipulator was Yang Chun. But who was Yang Lan? It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a vengeful person. He had to find some capital in the Drunken Immortal house. The Drunken Immortal house's branch in Taishaman was immediately put in a difficult position, and people kept looking for trouble. Speaking of it, the people of the Drunken Immortal house were really resourceful. They were absolutely unique in inquiring about news. They soon understood that Yang Lan was messing with them. After reporting to Senior Jiu-Xian, Senior Jiu-Xian instructed them to give and first have a good relationship, and then see what Yang Lan was up to. With the instructions of Senior Jiu-Xian, the manager of the branch in Taishaman immediately went to visit Yang Lan with a big gift. Their posture was very low, and they couldn't help saying good things, explaining that they also took on a business, and they were not intentionally targeting Yang Lan. After experiencing several such low-profile pleas, Yang Lan's revenge was finally satisfied, and he no longer looked for trouble with the Drunken Immortal house. However, he threw a business to the Drunken Immortal house and asked them to visit the family of the descendants of an old devil. This kind of task of finding people was the Drunken Immortal house's best, although the target was in the territory of the demon sects, and it seemed to be a bit troublesome. It was not a problem for the Drunken Immortal house. In recent years, the Drunken Immortal house has developed greatly. Not only the territory of the monster race, but even the demon sects have penetrated a lot. Many demon sects cultivators simply have the temperament of a mother. The Drunken Immortal house bought news with real gold and silver. What news can't they buy? Soon, a careful big net was arranged in the demon sects to find the whereabouts of a secluded family. However, it was not so easy to find this kind of family that has experienced tens of thousands of years. The Drunken Immortal house said at the beginning that this kind of thing may take a long time, and they asked Yang Lan to take care of it. In this regard, Yang Lan had no objection, but asked them to look for it as soon as possible. Yang Lan's strange request was also reported to Senior Jiu for the first time. Senior Jiu knew that Yang Chun and Yang Lan had discord, so the news about Yang Lan was very important. It was directly sealed and sent to Chunyang Palace, indicating that Yang Chun should pay special attention to it. He believed that as soon as Yang Chun returned to Chunyang Palace, he would be able to see it. The higher-ups of Taishaman had indeed been making preparations for the boundless cosmos stabilizing formation all these years. More than 100 formation experts in the sect were carefully selected. All of them were the ones who were absolutely loyal to the sect. All of them swore a great heart demon oath that they would never reveal the things they wanted to study. This time, they were allowed to touch the formation. After the secret research of over 100 formation masters, they found that this formation was completely effective. In fact, just by studying this formation, the Taishaman's formation masters had collectively improved their realms. It was truly miraculous. Such a powerful formation, the other sect couldn't recognize it all. It would be a pity not to use it. As long as they could be careful and not use the special formation eye, this formation could almost become the most powerful capital of Taishaman. In the future, it was not impossible to surpass the other four major sects. The materials needed for the formation, after hundreds of years of searching everywhere in the sect's frugality, had finally been collected. The next step was to arrange the subformation of the large array everywhere. When the sect formation eye was completed, it could continuously provide the greatest heaven sect with a rich and unparalleled spiritual power. This was a long-term and complicated work. It would take decades to arrange the formation. They couldn't be careless. Fortunately, these hundreds of formation masters had been stimulated by the bright prospects of the XXXX formation. They almost forgot to eat and sleep and began to contribute to the sect. The progress of the formation was very gratifying. At least, when Yang Chan sent Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan back to their respective sect, he had already discovered the traces of this formation. At that time, Yang Chun was secretly happy, but he didn't show it on his face. The big fish, the Taishaman, had finally taken the bait. After 90 years of experience in the mortal world, Yang Chun had also improved a lot in terms of the state of mind. The short life of mortals was almost a reincarnation in a few decades, which made Yang Chun have a different kind of understanding. The ultimate demonized vine could be purified in about 20 or 30 years. The few devilish beads that Yang Chun had in his hands were also purified by Yang Chun. He planned to use these devilish beads to refine a batch of elixirs that could increase cultivation after returning to the sect. It had to be said that these things that were contaminated with demonic chi were a bit special. Whether it was in the mortal world or in the spiritual world, Yang Chun had never heard of anything that could increase his cultivation base. Only in the immortal world, after the grade of some medicinal pills had passed the 7th grade, would they have such a magical effect. Directly increasing cultivation has always been a taboo in cultivation. First, it would give rise to the idea of reaping without sowing and affect the state of mind. Second, this kind of thing sounded like a crime. The Tao sects had never thought about this. Of course, the most important thing was that there was nothing at all that could achieve this effect. Even the 100,000-year-old ginseng Lingji could not do it. The devilish bead was obtained from the demonized monster beast. There was no taboo in the state of mind when it was used. It had such a magical effect. Yang Chun naturally had to study it. Fortunately, his current spiritual awareness cultivation base was enough for Yang Chun to divide his attention. It did not delay his cultivation, research, or even his own chores. Gao Gong Sunling had been away from the sect for a long time. For such a long time, they cultivated with Yang Chun. Although no one would say anything, there was no contribution to the sect. This time, when he went back, he would have to do some sect tasks and add some contribution to the sect. As for Yang Chun, there was no such problem at all. His contribution was enough for the palace master to pass on the position to him directly. The prosperity of the sect was developed on the basis of Yang Chun. How much more contribution did he have? When Yang Chun returned to Chunyang Palace with Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, what Yang Chun saw was a scene of increasing prosperity in the sect. On everyone's face, there was a kind of joy, and the whole sect seemed very positive. The first thing to do when he went back was naturally to meet Gao Yu's master, Yang Chen's master ancestor. As Yang Chen's wife, Gong Sumling also followed Yang Chen and Gao Yu to meet Wang Yong. "You're back? It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." It was nearly 100 years since they last saw each other. Wang Yong's state seemed very good. There was a vague feeling that his cultivation base was about to break through. However, there was a touch of melancholy between his eyebrows. He didn't know why. Chapter 1140. Master. Not only Yang Chen, but even Gao Yu saw it, and hurriedly called her master. "What happened?" "It's not a big deal. Yang Chen, your disciple, Mu Bo, his grandfather Mu Mingyuan has something wrong." Wang Yong knew that the Cypress monster family was brought back by Yang Chen personally, so when Yang Chen came back, he told Yang Chen about it. When he went out to gain experience, he was set up and was seriously injured in the duel. Wang Yong quickly finished his words. When they heard that Mu Mingyuan was only seriously injured, the anxiety in the hearts of Yang Chen and Gao Yu Gong Sunling dissipated a bit. As long as he was seriously injured and not dead, there was always a way to think about it. As long as he did not die on the spot, there was a chance. The situation is very serious. Yang Chen, you came back at the right time. Let's go and see. In Chunyang Palace, even among the cultivators in the mortal world, if Yang Chen claimed to be the second in the treatment of injuries, no one would dare to claim to be the first. Even if there were many people who were not convinced, it would not change the recognition in most people's hearts. Even Wang Yong was so anxious. Mu Mingyuan's injury was not optimistic. The three of them did not neglect, just sent Wang Yong's servant to report to the head of the palace, and hurried to the place where Mu Mingyuan was recuperating. In the past 200 years, Mu Mingyuan has also passed the Thunder Tribulation and entered the Yuanying stage. Because the cypress became a monster and cultivated in the bitter cold land for tens of thousands of years, his cultivation was strong, and he had made a loud name for himself. Some time ago, probably a few years ago, when he went out to gain experience, he was set up by a sect to fight a fair duel. The two sides first disagreed, and then the other party challenged Mu Mingyuan to fight. It seemed that there was nothing against the rules. According to reason, with the foundation of Mu Mingyuan's plant monster, against a master of the same realm, even if he failed, he would not lose too badly. However, the other party did not know what method was used, but Mu Mingyuan's whole body was paralyzed and his cultivation was abolished. The small sect called Flying Cloud Sect seemed to be targeting Chunyang Palace. It was no wonder that the expansion of Chunyang Palace in recent years had aroused the jealousy of some big sect and many small sect. It was not an exaggeration for some jealous fellows to do anything. However, after listening to Wang Yong's explanation on the way, Yang Chen understood. This Flying Cloud sect was just a small sect secretly controlled by the Taishaman in his previous life. It was unknown how many of these small sect Taishaman controlled. It was not unusual for Taishaman to target Chunyang Palace. However, Yang Chen did not tell Grandmaster Wang Yong the details of the Flying Cloud sect for the time being. It was better to take a look at Mu Mingyuan's injuries first. It seemed that the duel arranged by the other party was very reasonable, and there were many disciples and rogue cultivators of other sect watching the duel. Basically, there was no cheating in the duel, and Mu Mingyuan was seriously injured by his own strength. Even the people of Flying Cloud sect seemed to be very reasonable. They did not directly kill Mu Mingyuan in the duel, but sent someone to send him back. Although he was sent back, he became a disabled person. This time, Mu Mingyuan's injuries were even more serious than those of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. At that time, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were seriously injured by Hu Qianni, and even their meridians were destroyed. Their cultivation was also destroyed. But Mu Mingyuan's injuries were even more serious. Most of his body was destroyed, and it was not as simple as the destruction of his meridians. Even if Yang Chen did not take action at that time, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue could still cultivate again after their injuries were healed. But this time, Mu Mingyuan did not even have the chance to cultivate again. These were all explained by Wang Yong to Yang Chen on the way. The specific situation had to be seen by Yang Chen before he could make a judgment. The place where Mu Mingyuan was recuperating was in Hannah Mingyo's courtyard. Hannah Mingyu had a special affinity with plants and could easily regulate the growth of plants. Because of this, Mubo spent most of his time cultivating with his junior sister. With Hannah Mingyo's care and the elixirs of Chunyang Palace, Mu Mingyuan did not die over the years. However, the situation was not optimistic. Now, Mu Mingyuan could no longer maintain human form. He showed his original appearance and took root in Hannah Mingyo's courtyard, being taken care of by Hannah Mingyu. The whole huge cypress tree was full of scars, and the bark was almost broken beyond recognition. Even the main root was very seriously damaged. Almost half of the trunk was broken, and it was barely connected. It was likely to fall apart at any time. It was not easy for it to hold on until now in such a situation. All the leaves showed a kind of withered yellow. At first glance, there was only one thought in anyone's mind. This big tree was probably dying. Hannah Mingyu used a special method to keep Mu Mingyuan alive, but the huge cypress branches were connected with countless thin tubes, as if they were delivering nutrients to Mu Mingyuan. "Hello, Grandmaster." "Hello, Master." "Hello, Master's wives." Mubo was also there. When he saw Wang Yong with Yang Chun and Gao Yugong Sunling, he hurriedly greeted them. "Let's see your grandfather first." Yang Chun waved his hand and let Mubo not be too polite. At this time, it was important to see the wounded first. It was already very bad. When Yang Chun explored with his spiritual awareness, he frowned. Basically, Mu Mingyuan's vitality was only left with a trace. He was relying on Hannah Mingyu to hang on to his life. At any time, he would run out of oil. What a ruthless method! Yang Chun couldn't help but sigh, and then reached out and touched the trunk of Mu Mingyuan. The beast-controlling secret art was launched, and Yang Chun began to explore whether Mu Mingyuan was still conscious. It was a little comforting that although Mu Mingyuan's consciousness was still in a coma, it was not scattered. At this time, even the head of the palace and several elders heard that Yang Chun was back and rushed over. When they met, they did not say greetings. The head of the palace directly began to ask about Mu Mingyuan's injury. How is his injury? Can he be saved? The first sentence, the head of the palace asked this, which was the kind of sincere concern. Mu Mingyuan directly took a family to Chunyang Palace. He also had a great influence in the Hall of Eccentrics. This was also the reason why those guys from Feiyun's sect dealt with Mu Mingyuan. In fact, in recent years, the masters of the Chunyang Palace Hall of Eccentrics who went out to gain experience were basically troubled by many people. There were many sects involved, and there were also many rogue cultivators. Mu Mingyuan's matter was just the most serious one. There should be no problem in saving his life. After Yang Chun carefully examined Mu Mingyuan from the inside out, he finally gave an answer that made everyone feel relieved. As long as he could keep his life, everything else would wait until he survived. Chapter 1141. After confirming Mu Mingyuan's injury, Yang Chun didn't say anything and directly went into retreat to refine pills. Mu Mingyuan's injury was precarious and his life was hanging by a thread. In this case, he needed to use the 5th-grade medicinal pill. Moreover, these 5th-grade medicinal pills could only be used in batches from low to high. Otherwise, with Mu Mingyuan's current situation, if the medicinal power was a little stronger, it could directly take his life. Yang Chun did not dare to use the medicinal pills that were full of spiritual power at first. There was always a gradual process. Therefore, the medicinal pills needed were not 1, but at least 5. From the lowest level of nourishing qi pill to the highest level of lingji mushroom jade pill, Yang Chun had to prepare them, and all of them were refined by the 5th grade. During the refining, Yang Chun even used the 100,000 years old spirit medicine from Taishaman. And the medicinal qi contained in these 100,000 years of spirit medicine, Yang Chun could only use the most essence of it. Fortunately, the rest could be used to refine the appearance pill, so it would not be wasted. In each kind of medicinal pill, Yang Chun added a lot of 4C's mysterious coral liquid. Not only because the 4C's mysterious coral liquid could improve the grade of the medicinal pill, but most importantly, The 4C's mysterious coral liquid could balance the medicinal qi, so that the medicinal qi would not conflict in Mu Mingyuan's body. It took Yang Chun half a year to extract the essence of the elixir from the elixir and refine it into a pill. This was the result of Yang Chun refining 5 kinds of medicinal pills at the same time at a time. Fortunately, under the careful care of Hannah Mengyu, Mu Mingyuan had been maintaining that kind of half-dead state, but he did not die directly. Now Mu Mingyuan was obviously unable to take the medicine directly, and other methods had to be used to send the medicinal qi to Mu Mingyuan's body. This problem was not difficult for Yang Chun. Hannah Mingyu's means were good, but that was because Hannah Mingyu's strength could not be better, and she had not seen a more powerful technique. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yang Chun could also teach Hannah Mengyu a brand new method. A special 5th-grade qi replenishing pill that had been carefully refined was directly dissolved into the 4C's mysterious coral liquid by Yang Chun. Then, this large barrel of 4C's mysterious coral liquid was directly gasified by Yang Chun's spiritual power, and then Yang Chun used a powerful technique to control the gasified 4C's mysterious coral liquid evenly distributed in Mu Mingyuan's body. The huge cypress tree was directly covered by the purple mist, which began to seep into the branches and roots of the cypress tree bit by bit. The uniform penetration from the inside to the outside looked simple, but even Wang Yong, a master of the Deshang stage, could only look at this scene in a daze. Others might have only seen the medicinal qi being poured into Mu Mingyuan, but Wang Yong keenly discovered that most of Yang Chen's divine sense was protecting Mu Mingyuan, preventing him from being injured by the medicinal qi. With Wang Yong's control ability, he was currently unable to do this. In fact, if there was no human immortal first-level spiritual awareness cultivation base, it was impossible to do it at all. In front of everyone's incredible and somewhat hopeful eyes, the purple mist penetrated into Mu Mingyuan's body a little bit. This process alone lasted for 3 full days. After 3 days, the purple finally slowly became thinner, and in the end, no purple appeared. Mu Mingyuan's situation had changed significantly. Even without using their divine awareness, everyone could see that the tree, which had been dying, finally showed a little vitality. Yang Chen did not stop for a moment and directly began to use the second kind of medicinal pill. It was also dissolved into the 4C's mysterious coral liquid. It also turned into a purple mist and a little bit penetrated into Mu Mingyuan's body. After the treatment of the second kind of medicinal pill, Mu Mingyuan's body finally began to slowly stabilize, and it was no longer in a state that could break at any time. At this point, everyone was basically relieved. At least in this state, there was no problem at all to survive. However, Yang Chun did not stop. Next was the third kind of medicinal pill, and the same method continued to be used. The result of this completion was that Mu Mingyuan's vitality was more, and even the seemingly withered leaves had a little more green. Next was the fourth kind of medicinal pill, and the method of use was the same. At this point, the scars on Mu Mingyuan's body began to slowly recover, and the broken body seemed to have been glued together. It became a complete tree. The most important thing was that Mu Mingyuan's consciousness had been awakened, and he had consciousness. Basically, every time, Yang Chen used at least 90% of his energy to try to maintain Mu Mingyuan's body from being hurt by the strong medicinal energy. So far, it seems that the effect is good. The last kind of medicinal pill, which was also the most powerful 5th-grade Lingji mushroom jade pill, Mu Mingyuan, whose body had been completely destroyed, still couldn't bear it. With the help of Yang Chen, after enjoying this overbearing medicinal pill, Mu Mingyuan's injuries were finally healed, and a trace of spiritual power was produced in his body. However, Mu Mingyuan's current situation could only be described as healing from the injury, and could not be completely cured. The body seemed to have been kneaded together, but it was completely different from the previous state. As for the trace of spiritual power produced in the body, it was at best the level of the outer sect disciples who had just found the sense of qi. Your body has been completely destroyed. Even if you recover to this state now, you can't return to the past. Mu Mingyuan was already conscious, but he couldn't speak. Yang Chun said all this by touching Mu Mingyuan's trunk with one hand and using the beast-controlling secret art to send it into his consciousness. Basically, Mu Mingyuan was already ruined. Even if he maintained his consciousness and could barely cultivate from the beginning, it was impossible for him to achieve much. The other party was cruel and merciless, and he sincerely wanted to destroy Mu Mingyuan. Yang Chun said these words at the same time, and everyone around could hear them. Hearing what Yang Chun said, many people sighed. A nascent soul realm master with a promising future became like this. No matter who it was, they would not feel good. Even if you recultivate, you can only reach the foundation stage at most. Whether you can condense the core is still another matter. Yang Chun didn't seem to be afraid to hit Mu Mingyuan and directly said this best guess. Not to mention Mu Mingyuan himself. Even Mu Bo, who heard this, couldn't help but lower his head, and there was an unspeakable depression in his heart. I think you also understand that those people are targeting you, and from the beginning, they plan to destroy you. Yang Chen's words were not finished, and he continued, I want to know, do you still want to take revenge with your own hands? All the people who heard it widened their eyes and looked at Yang Chen with great confusion. He was beaten like this when he was in the nascent soul realm, and now he still wanted to take revenge with his own hands? Are you kidding me? How is this possible? Chapter 1142. No matter who it was, standing in the position of Mu Mingyuan, this proposal was absolutely acceptable. There was no future for his own cultivation, but Yang Chun still had a way to let him avenge himself. Did he still need to consider it? You won't lie to me, right? Mu Mingyuan's consciousness quickly passed a confirmed consciousness, full of doubts and surprises. I spent so much, 100 gene of 4 C's mysterious coral liquid, plus 17 kinds of 100,000 years old elixirs, not to make you happy. Yang Chen's face did not change, and he directly said these words. At this time, except for a few people who knew the details of Yang Chen, the rest of the people thoroughly understood what price Yang Chen had spent. The purple mist looked inconspicuous, but it turned out to be the extremely precious 4 C's mysterious coral liquid. When they thought of the huge benefits that a drop of 4 C's mysterious coral liquid could bring, Yang Chen used 5 barrels. Those who did not know Yang Chen's wealth felt a heartache. Was it really worth it to use such benefits on a waste? However, in the eyes of the head of the palace and several elders, such a so-called waste was absolutely worth it. Just this time, it made countless monster race masters unswervingly join the Chunyang Palace Hall of Eccentrics. Was there anything more moving than this naked fact? Even a waste like Mu Mingyuan could use such precious medicinal materials. What would happen if it was replaced by others? Everyone had their own accounts in their hearts. Even the monster race was not a fool. Yang Chen's hand had been holding Mu Mingyuan's trunk until Mu Mingyuan was very sure that he was willing to avenge himself. Yang Chen nodded and said slowly, First cultivate for a while, wait for you to be able to speak, then we will talk about other things. Now Mu Mingyuan's life was completely out of danger, and his body had regained its spiritual power. His consciousness was still there, and he would soon be able to speak again. Even if he could not directly cultivate the transformation secret art to transform into a human form, he could still communicate normally. Without saying anything, the head of the palace first released the news, and then called Yang Chun and Gao Yu Gong Sunling to the council hall and asked about their whereabouts in detail. In this regard, Yang Chun did not say much in detail. He just said that he found a place to practice with the 4 women and did not say much else. Is the compass that the Taishaman sold to find your position invalid? Wang Yong was very concerned about Yang Chen's whereabouts during this time. He even bought a compass from someone at a high price that could track Yang Chen's whereabouts. But he still could not detect Yang Chen's position. It should still be useful. Yang Chen gave an ambiguous answer and replied with a smile. But the place where the disciples practice is a bit special. It is not easy for ordinary people to find it in this way. It was not easy to find. It was simply impossible to find it all. It must be known that Xixia Town was where the dragon vein was located. Under the influence of the innate human emperor's aura, not to mention finding people with a subtle spiritual awareness, Even if that spiritual awareness was magnified 10 times, it was impossible to be discovered. These were all things that Yang Chun had already thought of before taking the four women to practice. He did not want to see himself and his four wives being harassed for no reason. It must be known that some people wanted to know his whereabouts and get some benefits from him. Compared with the quiet experience of Yang Chen's family, the development of Chunyang Palace was more and more colorful. After 90 years, the size of the disciples had expanded at least 3 times. Excellent disciples emerged one after another, and their strength was constantly increasing. There was another master of the Deshang stage, and the high-end power could not be underestimated. This was one of the reasons why the disciples of Chunyang Palace were hated by people outside. Many people were reluctant to see another Chunyang Palace outside the 5 major sections. Mu Mingyuan was the most obvious example of these guys expressing their jealousy. Of course, this was a superficial statement. The real reason was the secret suppression of the Taishaman. It was just that the current Chunyang Palace was no longer the previous Chunyang Palace. It was impossible for the Taishaman to need it, so they could only use these indirect means. Mu Mingyuan's hatred must be avenged. Even the Feiyun sect itself understood this. Since the last time the Chunyang Palace destroyed the Luo Yuan family in the late Deshang stage in anger, few people dared to confront the Chunyang Palace blatantly. However, the Feiyun sect was not a vegetarian. They were prepared for it. Even the Taishaman secretly transferred a lot of hidden masters to the Feiyun sect, just to take this opportunity to greatly damage the face and reputation of the Chunyang Palace, and at the same time, to greatly weaken the strength of the Chunyang Palace. The Chunyang Palace was really tolerant. Mu Mingyuan had been sent back for a few years, and there had been no movement, which also made the people of the Feiyun sect feel very inexplicable. In fact, Mu Mingyuan's injury had not yet been determined, and the Chunyang Palace did not know how to deal with it for the time being. Even Mu Bo wanted to retaliate immediately, but he was stopped by the ancestor Wang Yong, waiting for Yang Chun to come back. The return of Yang Chun immediately gave the Chunyang Palace a backbone. Even the Chunyang Palace vowed that Mu Mingyuan would avenge himself, and the sect would not interfere. When the news came out, it was not known how many people laughed their teeth off. It was true that Yang Chun was a 5th-grade alchemist master, but if he wanted to cure this degree of injury and let Mu Mingyuan avenge himself, it was impossible unless he could refine a 7th-grade medicinal pill. What was the Arabian Nights? This was it. During the period of time when Mu Mingyuan had an accident, the Chunyang Palace did not know how many masters had been invited, but they were unable to do anything about Mu Mingyuan's injury. Even Yang Chun himself said that Mu Mingyuan could at most cultivate to the foundation stage, and it was impossible for him to even reach the Jidan stage. How could he avenge himself? Countless people were waiting to see Yang Chun make a fool of himself, but some people did not think it was a joke. At least this was the case for the high-level people of the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island. However, even if they wanted to break their heads, they couldn't understand what method Yang Chun was going to use to achieve this. A few months passed quickly, and Mu Mingyuan's injury was finally healed, and his spiritual power was restored to the 6th or 7th level of the Qi refining stage. Although he could not use the transformation secret art, he was already able to communicate clearly with others. It was at this time that Yang Chun appeared again beside Mu Mingyuan. "I'm ready." The first sentence that Mu Mingyuan said when he saw Yang Chun was this sentence. His heart was already filled with the belief that he would die. Even if he was going to die, he would drag those guys from the Feiyun sect down with him. "Before leaving, I will ask again." Yang Chun asked very seriously, "Are you sure you want to do it yourself?" "I am sure." Mu Mingyuan's voice was firm. "Even if you have to pay a high price for it?" Yang Chun asked again. Chapter 1143. It was estimated that Mu Mingyuan had thoroughly thought about this problem during this period of time. In his situation, it was impossible to get revenge without paying the price. There was no need to think about this problem anymore. "Even if I have to pay the price of my life." Mu Mingyuan repeated the sentence and even directly bet his own life on it. He believed that Yang Chun would never lie to him. "There is no need to pay the price of my life." Yang Chan waved his hand slightly. However, you have to be mentally prepared. For a long time, you will not be able to become a real master because of the lack of mental cultivation. Are you willing to do this? The people present were not only Mu Mingyuan's family and Yang Chen's master and disciple. When they heard that Yang Chen had come to Mu Mingyuan, the head of the palace and the elders also rushed over, but they had not spoken before. Originally, everyone's thoughts were the same as Mu Mingyuan's. This kind of thing must be to stimulate the potential and use some secret method to greatly improve the cultivation, and then the best ending was the exhaustion of the oil lamp. Unexpectedly, the price that Yang Chen wanted Mu Mingyuan to pay was just like this. For a moment, everyone present was a little speechless. It couldn't be helped. What they heard was so unexpected that everyone could not believe whether what they heard was true or not. Such an easy price? How is that possible? Yang Chen had once again made the people in his own sect unable to believe it. Could the young palace master be more shocking? Mu Mingyuan had been completely stunned in place, and the big mouth on the trunk subconsciously replied, "I am willing." But in fact, his mind did not know what he said. What did it mean to be unable to become a master for a long time? If he could not become a master, how could he get revenge? It must be known that he fought with the other party in his heyday and was openly injured by the other party's hand. The other party was definitely a master. In his current state, could he beat the other party? Even if you can only be at the bottom of a group of masters? You must know that the taste of being at the bottom is not good. Yang Chen asked a question that made everyone inexplicable. What did he mean by the weakest among experts? If he didn't become an expert, how could he take revenge? Those who had thought about it were almost certain that Yang Chen had a secret method that allowed Mu Mingyuan to consume his own profound qi to greatly increase his cultivation in a short period of time. After taking his revenge, his body had suffered a great loss, so he was in a worse state than he was now. That must be it. Since Yang Chen said so, it meant that Mu Mingyuan would definitely survive. However, his future had definitely been completely destroyed, and there was no possibility of recovery. It had to be said that if one wanted a short period of glory, they would have to pay the price of a lifetime. But then again, if he could pay such a price in exchange for personally taking revenge, then it would definitely be worth it. Since he could no longer be glorious, he might as well be a little dimmer in exchange for the pleasure of personally taking revenge. It was worth it. Can I still become a master like this? Mu Mingyuan laughed bitterly, answering Yang Chen's question. Of course, as long as you cultivate hard, it's still possible. Hard work can make up for a lack of talent. It's just that it will take a longer time. However, Yang Chen gave an answer that people didn't know whether it was good or bad. This made Mu Mingyuan's heart abnormally perturbed, and he no longer held onto the belief that he had for the past few months. He still had a chance to become a master? Was that even possible? However, Yang Chen said so, which meant that it was possible. The problem was, not long ago, Yang Chen personally said that he could only cultivate until the foundation establishment stage. This contradicted himself. What did Yang Chen mean? Not only Mu Mingyuan, but everyone was already confused. They didn't understand what Yang Chen meant. Everyone looked at Yang Chen anxiously, hoping that Yang Chen would give them a clear answer, so that even if they died in the morning, they could at least die knowing the truth. Well, since the decision has been made, let's go. Yang Chen didn't mean to explain to everyone and said directly. Mu Mingyuan was personally taken by Mu Bo to Fei Yun's sect to take revenge, and Yang Chen also followed him all the way. Now, as long as they had the opportunity and the ability to come out of Chunyang Palace, they basically rushed out. Everyone wanted to see what Yang Chen was planning and what method he would use to help Mu Mingyuan achieve his goal. Chunyang Palace didn't hide this matter. Along the way, they saw such a large group of people from Chunyang Palace, and countless people came to ask out of curiosity. After knowing the whole story, they immediately followed the large group to watch the fun. Before they arrived at Fei Yun's sect, there were already thousands of people gathered. Fei Yun's sect had long received the news. Hearing that Chunyang Palace was going to make a big move, a group of high-level officials all thought that their plan was successful. Since the other party wanted to bring Mu Mingyuan over, It was okay for Mu Mingyuan to fight alone. As long as a disciple of Chunyang Palace took action, Feiyun's sect could say that Chunyang Palace took the initiative to provoke trouble, and the two sides would have a righteous reason to fight. Finally, Mu Mingyuan came to Feiyun's sect. The master who challenged Mu Mingyuan at that time also stood not far from Mu Mingyuan, Mu Bo, and Yang Chun under the pressure of the people of Feiyun's sect. What? Are you going to fight 3 against 1? The Yuanying master of Feiyun's sect sneered and asked mockingly. Mu Bo had already been ordered by Yang Chun. At this moment, he put Mu Mingyuan down and rooted in the soil. Without saying anything, he turned and left. Only Mu Mingyuan and Yang Chun were left in Chunyang Palace. 2 against 1. The Yuanying master sneered again. Yang Chun just stared at him very contemptuously. He was obviously at the peak of Yuanying realm, but he had to pretend to be at the early stage of Yuanying realm to plot against Mu Mingyuan. This alone deserved to die. Open your mouth. Yang Chun commanded Mu Mingyuan, and Mu Mingyuan opened the big mouth on the tree trunk according to his words. A huge golden ball with a radius of 3 feet was thrown into Mu Mingyuan's big mouth by Yang Chun. It had to be said that fortunately, Mu Mingyuan was in his original state. If he was in human form, he could not swallow such a devilish bead at all. After the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, kill them all. Yang Chun patted Mu Mingyuan's trunk and ignored him. He got up and walked away. As he walked, he shouted to the people around him, "Back off! Back off! If you don't want to die, retreat 5 miles away." The time it takes for a stick of incense to burn? The other party listened to Yang Chun's words and laughed. Okay, this old man will wait for you for the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn. But this time, this old man will not be merciful. You can wait to collect your corpses. In the wild laughter, the Yuanying master of Feiyun's sect seemed to be very open and above board. He stood with his hands behind his back, and his clothes fluttered in the wind, full of the demeanor of a master. Chapter 1144. Yang Chun's figure flew back, and at the same time, he shouted for everyone to retreat. The onlookers who didn't know what was going on didn't understand why Yang Chun asked them to retreat. Only the people of Chunyang Palace were very obedient and flew back without saying a word. Yang Chun said to retreat a few miles away, so they should retreat a few miles away. No one had any objection on this point. Most of the onlookers still chose to stay where they were. Only when they got closer could they see it clearly. Although the duel between masters in the Yuanying stage would affect a large area, wasn't Mu Mingyuan already disabled? Even if his potential was stimulated, how powerful could he be? Therefore, a group of idlers only retreated about a mile away, which was enough to give face to Yang Chun, Master Yang, but they still surrounded the 2 people involved in the duel, waiting to watch the show. Just now, Yang Chun fed Mu Mingyuan a huge golden ball, and everyone was very shocked. Although they didn't know what it was, this time Mu Mingyuan came to take revenge in person. It must be related to that thing. However, that golden ball that didn't even have spiritual power fluctuations, did it really have that kind of effect? Just after such a short time, Mu Mingyuan's aura over there had changed. Originally, everyone knew very well that his cultivation was at the 6th level of qi refining, but now it seemed that it had begun to climb. This was a normal phenomenon. If he couldn't even improve his cultivation, then what was the point of playing? The onlookers were only interested in what the ball was and how useful it could be. As for Mu Mingyuan's change, who would care? If they had to care, they would just use him as a test subject to see if Master Yang's things were useful. In a short time, Mu Mingyuan's aura had risen to the foundation establishment stage, and it continued to climb. Mu Mingyuan also felt the surging spiritual power in his body, and his face was full of surprise. The Yuanying stage master of the Feiyun sect on the opposite side looked at Mu Mingyuan with contempt, but he was thinking about how to take this opportunity to kill Mu Mingyuan and arouse the anger of the disciples of Chunyang Palace. Once they took action, there would be a reason for the sect to start a war. At that time, Chunyang Palace would not be able to bear the consequences. Originally, he didn't have many opportunities, but now, an opportunity was directly delivered to him. If he didn't seize such a good opportunity, he would be letting down this heaven-sent opportunity. Mu Mingyuan's qi continued to climb. He had already reached the peak of the foundational level and was beginning to condense his core. In the past, this process would have taken at least half a year or even longer. However, for Mu Mingyuan, it only took a few breaths' time. In this regard, people did not find it strange. After all, Mu Mingyuan was originally a nascent soul cultivator and had long had the experience of forming a core. Forming a core was not difficult for Mu Mingyuan at all, as long as his cultivation was enough. It was very normal. What everyone cared about was what Yang Chen gave Mu Mingyuan. Was it a medicine that could directly stimulate his potential at the moment of life and death and give him a chance to live? If there was such a medicine and it was not expensive, they would have to ask Master Yang for some just in case. Mu Mingyuan, who was in the Jidan stage, was still rising rapidly. After a while, he was in the middle Jidan stage, the late Jidan stage, the peak Jidan stage, and then it continued. At this time, some people had already noticed that something was wrong and quickly fled back. Mu Mingyuan was about to reach the peak of the Jidan stage and would soon attract the heavenly tribulation. Those with poor cultivation would be involved in the heavenly tribulation, which was not a joke. The tribulation clouds in the sky had begun to form, and the sky instantly became dark. Seeing that the situation was not good, those who retreated to the back to watch the fun couldn't help but marvel at this moment. What kind of elixir was this? How could it improve his cultivation so much? Although Mu Mingyuan originally had the cultivation of the Yuanying stage, the speed of recovery of this cultivation was too shocking. It was simply a miracle. In just 100 breaths, a guy in the 6th stage of qi refining began to cross the tribulation and form the nascent soul. This kind of thing was unimaginable to people before, but now it happened in front of their eyes. The Yuanying stage masters of the Feiyun sect also began to take it seriously, but they still refrained from making a move. Since Yang Chen shouted for Mu Mingyuan to take revenge by himself, it was normal for him to raise his cultivation to the Yuanying stage. I always thought it was a joke, but now it seemed that it was still a little interesting. It was a pity that this kind of cultivation that relied on external forces to improve, after all, was not as powerful as the original cultivation. Even if it was higher, what could it do? His opponent in the nascent soul stage could now be sure that this method of stimulating his potential could not last long. As long as he could endure a little bit of hardship in the early stage, he could go all out in one go. Then, he would be exhausted, and Mu Mingyuan would be exhausted. This was also based on the basis that Mu Mingyuan thought that he was really in the early Yuanying stage. If he had directly revealed the cultivation of the late Yuanying stage, maybe he would not have been able to draw Mu Mingyuan into the trap at that time. Kacha kacha! The tribulation thunder fell like raindrops, and all the speed had been increased several times. The normal thunder tribulation would take at least half an incense stick of time, but now it was only a few dozen breaths, and the 9 tribulation thunder had already struck Mu Mingyuan's body. He had already had the experience of resisting the heavenly tribulation once. So Mu Mingyuan did not spend too much effort to resist these tribulation thunder. The crazy increase of spiritual power in his body made him still unable to believe that this was the power he had. The power was so strong that even this level of tribulation thunder was not a problem at all. Mu Mingyuan did not even think about how to resist the tribulation thunder, and naturally passed the tribulation thunder. After crossing the tribulation and forming the nascent soul, Mu Mingyuan's momentum finally slowed down. Of course, this was relative to the speed of the previous increase. After all, the cultivation of the Yuanying stage was already very good. At this point, everyone around seemed to have a premonition that Mu Mingyuan's cultivation had reached the end. In fact, even Mu Mingyuan thought that this was the end. He didn't expect that he would have the power of the Yuanying stage again. Mu Mingyuan, who was standing in the same place, was a little dazed and even forgot to use the transformation secret art. He still maintained the appearance of a big tree rooted in the soil. It was still early, but the Yuanying stage master of the Feiyun sect was already a little impatient. This posture, it should be coming to the end, right? While guessing, the Yuanying stage master secretly made preparations, calculating how long to pretend to hold on this time before making a move. Obviously, everyone was going to be disappointed. Until now, Mu Mingyuan's cultivation was still rising. The middle stage of the Yuanying stage, the late stage of the Yuanying stage, and soon reached the peak of the Yuanying stage. Chapter 1145. If Mu Mingyuan's cultivation base rose to the middle Yuanying stage, everyone could accept it, but when he reached the late Yuanying stage, everyone was shocked. Since Yang Chen said that he wanted Mu Mingyuan to take revenge, it was naturally to stimulate his potential. So it was understandable that he broke out with a stronger power than before. Otherwise, how could he take revenge with his original cultivation base? But what kind of spirit medicine was it that could raise a person in the early Yuanying stage to the peak Yuanying stage? Was it time to start? Everyone thought so when they saw that Mu Mingyuan had become a peak Yuanying stage cultivator. Even the master of the Feiyun sect opposite Mu Mingyuan thought so, and even began to take out his flying sword. Oh my God! In fire tribulation. It was not known who suddenly shouted this sentence in horror, and it completely ignited everyone's emotions. Countless idlers who wanted to stand in front to see more clearly at this moment wished that they could have 2 more legs and ran frantically towards the rear desperately. The power of the Yin fire tribulation, without the strength of the Deshang stage. Who dared to stay in the scope of the tribulation? Did they not want to live? The face of the Yuanying stage master of the Feiyun sect finally changed. Yang Chen directly promoted Mu Mingyuan to the Deshang stage. No wonder he dared to say that Mu Mingyuan would personally take revenge. It seemed that it was not difficult for a master of the Deshang stage to kill him, who was disguised as a peak Yuanying stage cultivator in the early Yuanying stage. At this time, the Yuanying stage opponent could not care about anything else, and he also wished that he could grow wings and fly to a distant place. He was only a few dozen feet away from Mu Mingyuan, and Mu Mingyuan's Yin fire tribulation would directly burn him to ashes. Almost at the speed of escape, the Yuanying stage opponent finally escaped the scope of the Yin fire tribulation before the Yin fire tribulation arrived, and then looked at Mu Mingyuan in horror. Retreat again. The group of people over there was in a mess, and Yang Chen, who was originally in the back, had waved to the people of Chunyang Palace to retreat again. If the last time was Yang Chen's prestige in the sect, this time it was really an iron fact to tell everyone that listening to Yang Chen's words would not be wrong. Without saying anything, the people of Chunyang Palace retreated again. Compared with those who did not listen to advice, they naturally retreated calmly, and they were fortunate enough to witness the Thunder Tribulation and the Yin Fire Tribulation at such a close distance. The benefits for their future cultivation were self-evident. The terrified nascent soul cultivators of the Flying Cloud sect could only watch as invisible flames appeared on Mu Mingyuan's body. 1 wave, 2 waves, all the way until the 9th wave. Then, Mu Mingyuan began to burst out a terrifying power that swept across the entire area. At this time, the peak Yuanying stage cultivator was stage Yuanying stage Mu Mingyuan, and Yuanying stage would be Mingmu Yuanying stage. Ming stage was Mu Mingyuan was stage, and Yang Mu Yang, and Himu Yuanying stage Mu Himu Kud Mu had not. Himu, Yang he was he. Yang was had. Not to mention, after experiencing the Thunder Tribulation and the Yin Fire Tribulation, the serious injuries in Mu Mingyuan's body that affected his cultivation almost no longer existed. Heaven's retribution made everyone change color, but was also good for the body. Otherwise, it would not be possible to pass the Heaven's retribution to improve their cultivation base. However, what made Mu Mingyuan completely unbelievable was that he still had power left at the moment, and the spiritual power that erupted from his body was still constantly improving. After a while, he had reached the peak of the early Deshang stage. Those who witnessed all this with their own eyes were completely dumbfounded at the moment. They stared at Mu Mingyuan, who was still in the form of a big tree, and could not say a word. They had seen exaggerated things, but they had never seen such an exaggeration. Stimulating the potential of the body, it actually made a master of the early Yuanying stage forcibly promoted to a big realm and entered the Deshang stage. At this time, Homu Mingyuan reacted that he was still in the form of a big tree. With a move of his mind, the transformation secret art was naturally used, and he instantly became a middle-aged uncle. As if his eyes were real, he stared directly at the Yuanying stage master of the Flying Cloud sect. Although he had escaped from the scope of the Yin fire tribulation, the Yuanying stage master was still a little guilty. At this moment, he was stared at by Mu Mingyuan, and he couldn't help but put on the strongest fighting posture, regardless of the fact that he had already shown the strength of the peak Yuanying stage. It turned out to be a master of the peak Yuanying stage. No wonder. Mu Mingyuan's voice came from afar, and everyone heard it clearly. And those with discerning eyes naturally saw the abnormality of the Yuanying stage opponent and immediately figured out the trick in it. If that's the case, then give me your life. Mu Mingyuan's voice and the person almost arrived in front of the Yuanying stage master at the same time and did not use the flying sword, but just smashed down with a punch. Boom! The Yuanying stage master took Mu Mingyuan's fist and blocked the blow. This time, it almost consumed more than half of the spiritual power of the Yuanying stage master, but also made the Yuanying stage master secretly happy. If it was only this level of attack, he could barely support a few times and then escape. As soon as this idea appeared, Mu Mingyuan's second punch had already smashed down. Boom! This punch, the Yuanying stage master sacrificed the body protection magic weapon and the flying sword to resist. However, it was completely different from the previous punch. The power of this punch was so great that the spiritual power contained in it was far from comparable to the previous punch. The Yuanying stage master only felt a sweetness in his throat, and a stream of blood spurted out. The body protection magic weapon burst into pieces, and he didn't even take a blow. Mu Mingyuan's cultivation was getting stronger and stronger, and the Yuanying stage master who had just realized this could not tell anyone. Mu Mingyuan's third punch landed mercilessly on his head. Boom! Mu Mingyuan's opponent, the master of the peak Yuanying stage of the Feiyun sect, directly turned into a pool of meat, dead. Feiyun sect, since you dare to plot against this old man, then let's settle the account together. After killing his opponent, Mu Mingyuan did not stop and directly rushed to the gate of the Feiyun sect, not far away. Most of the onlookers just saw Mu Mingyuan kill his opponent with 3 punches and did not see more. But there were many discerning people, and those people were shocked to find that in such a short time, Mu Mingyuan's cultivation had reached the late Deshang stage. What kind of horror was this? The improvement of his cultivation could be so fast. What did Yang Chun feed Mu Mingyuan? The problem was that this was not the end. Just after a few dozen breaths, someone began to roar wildly. Oh my God! Wind tribulation! Chapter 1146. Among the people present, it was estimated that except for Yang Chen's family, no one had the opportunity to see the wind tribulation. Even those who came to watch the fun were mixed with people with ulterior motives. Not everyone could rest assured that someone would peep at them when they were crossing the tribulation. To be able to witness the tribulation of an expert, especially the wind tribulation, was a great honor for cultivators. It was also a great opportunity. However, now those who could observe the wind tribulation at a close distance wish they could fly to the sky and never see the wind tribulation. Not for anything else, but because they did not listen to Yang Chen's words. They were too close, so they were all shrouded in the wind tribulation. In the panic, countless people did not even know where to escape. They just scurried around like headless flies, directly causing the whole team to be in chaos. The team was in chaos, and it was even more uncontrollable. Some poor guys had been injured by their companions who rushed in. The smart people hurriedly fled in the direction where the people of Chunyang Palace were hiding. That was the most reasonable direction to escape. Someone was afraid of blocking the way and immediately shouted around, "Follow the people of Chunyang Palace." With this shout, everyone suddenly reacted and immediately paused. After confirming the direction of the people of Chunyang Palace, they quickly rushed to the team of Chunyang Palace. The guys who rushed over were as embarrassed as they could be, and their faces were as ugly as they could be. But finally, before the wind tribulation arrived, they cried for their parents and fled to a safe area. Among the chaotic people, there were some famous masters, the disciples of Chunyang Palace. Looking at the appearance of those famous masters, all shook their heads for a while. Mu Mingyuan had rushed into the mountain gate of Feiyun's sect at this moment. With the cultivation base of the Peak de Shang stage, he did not need to do anything at all. The aura he released was enough to make all the people of Feiyun's sect unable to move. Feiyun's sect was just a secret peripheral sect of Taishaman. The highest cultivation base was only at the Peak Yuanying stage. There was not even a master of the Deshang stage. How could they resist the pressure of Mu Mingyuan's Peak Deshang stage? All the disciples in the Flying Cloud sect could only feel the overwhelming pressure and fear. Then, they watched helplessly as the tribulation clouds formed in the sky and the wind tribulation began to descend. The most powerful calamity in the mortal world was happening right under their noses. Unfortunately, there weren't many people who could watch it calmly from beginning to end. Of course, the disciples of Chunyang Palace were among them. Most of the onlookers were frightened by the wind tribulation. Even though they had reached the side of the troops of Chunyang Palace, they were still not sure. They continued to flee and missed the good opportunity. Even if they had the guts to stay and watch, when they saw the first wind test fall and the miserable situation of the Feiyun sect, they no longer had the interest to watch the wind test. They just tried their best to recall whether they had offended the Chunyang Palace recently. When the first wind test fell, Mu Mingyuan's figure had quickly appeared in the core area of the Feiyun sect, more than 100 miles away from the crowd of onlookers. Those who fled were just scaring themselves. Of course, Mu Mingyuan left such a good opportunity for the Feiyun sect to enjoy. How could he still think of them? Before the second wind test fell, all the people in the core area of the Feiyun sect were turned into powder. The Heaven's Tribulation didn't care whether the people inside were the ones who were crossing the tribulation or not. As long as they were within the range of the Heaven's Tribulation, they were the targets of the Heaven's Tribulation. Following that, Mu Mingyuan felt as if he had easily passed the 9 wind tribulations. He couldn't believe it himself. After the complete baptism of the wind tribulation, his body began to change dramatically. The wind tribulation, which was regarded as a natural moat by many masters in the past, was like a small threshold to Mu Mingyuan. At most, it was as difficult as the tribulation of the Jedon stage. For Mu Mingyuan, it was not difficult at all. After the tribulation, there was still a short time before he ascended. Mu Mingyuan's body instantly appeared in the crowd of Chunyang Palace and stood in front of Yangchun. Those disciples who were not from Chunyang Palace quickly moved away. They didn't dare to watch the show. If they made Mu Mingyuan unhappy, it would be the best ending for them to be smashed to pieces. Didn't you say that I would pay the price? How did this happen? Mu Mingyuan could certainly feel the changes in his body and the call of another world. But if he didn't take advantage of this time to get the answer from Yangchun, he wouldn't feel at ease even after he ascended. You have indeed paid the price, Yangchun replied without changing his expression. Is this the price you said? I will become a mediocre person who needs a long time to make up for the lack of cultivation? When Mu Mingyuan said this, he felt very uncomfortable. If the people who passed the tribulation and ascended were all mediocre, then what was a master? Mu Mingyuan wasn't the only one who felt uncomfortable. Those who heard Yangchun's words all wanted to beat Yangchun up. How could there be such an ironic person? It made everyone's mood go up and down as if they were sitting on a roller coaster. Those with a weak heart could be directly killed by such a change in the time it took for a joss stick to burn. Your state of mind is not cultivated enough. You just relied on your cultivation far beyond the tribulation realm to resist the heavenly tribulation. Yangchun replied with a bitter smile. When you really go to the spiritual realm, do you still think you are a master? You'll be lucky if you don't get taught a lesson. How dare you hope for anything else? The real price you have to pay is that your state of mind is not cultivated enough. You have to spend at least 3 times more time in the spiritual realm than in the mortal world to make up for it, and then your cultivation will fall behind others. To be honest, if it wasn't for Mu Mingyuan's special situation, Yangchun definitely wouldn't have used such a method to help him grow. There's no other way. I don't know if it will help you, or harm you. When countless people heard Yang Chen's words, they wished they could replace Mu Mingyuan. They almost raised their hands in front of Yang Chen and cried, begging Yang Chen, "I'm not afraid of you. Come and harm me." How many people wanted to reach the nascent soul stage in their lifetime, but they couldn't get it, not to mention the extravagant hope of crossing the tribulation and ascending. Here, Yang Chen easily sent a person who was recognized as a waste to the spiritual world and said that he harmed him. How could those who cultivated honestly and crossed the tribulation endure it? Even the most ignorant person would know that the three calamities and tribulations were both tests and opportunities. After passing the three disasters, one would definitely be tempered by the heavenly tribulation. Apart from other things, one's lifespan alone would increase by thousands of years, and this didn't include the various benefits such as the tempered cultivation, divine sense, dharma treasures, and body. Chapter 1147. Lifespan alone was enough for countless people in the mortal world to painstakingly beg for it. But in Yang Chen's words, it was actually harming Mu Mingyuan. Why was there such a huge difference between people's opportunities? Mu Mingyuan was already so shocked by Yang Chen's words that he couldn't control himself. Even though he was now a first-stage human immortal who had undergone the heavenly tribulation and ascended, his state of mind was still lacking, and he couldn't be as calm as a first-stage human immortal. Pointing at Yang Chen, Mu Mingyuan's lips trembled a few times, and he really didn't know what to say. Making him undergo the heavenly tribulation and ascend was harming himself. But was it normal for him to spend the rest of his life in the foundation establishment stage? Originally, he wanted to say something, but the time had come. An irresistible suction force came from the sky. Mu Mingyuan's body slowly rose into the sky before everyone's fervent gazes. Then, he turned into a beam of white light and disappeared without a trace. Ascension in broad daylight, the most solemn and desired scene of mortal cultivators, happened in front of everyone's eyes. Even after Mu Mingyuan's figure disappeared for a long time, countless people still couldn't react and couldn't piece the whole thing together. They could only blame the fact that this kind of thing was so unusual that most people felt like they were in a dream. Otherwise, how could they have seen a six-stage Qi practitioner undergo the heavenly tribulation and ascend in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn? How long can an incense stick burn for? How many amazing and peerless geniuses were able to transcend their tribulation and ascend within 1,000 years? Their aptitude was already so good that countless sects fought over them. But compared to the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, they were simply a block of wood. As for themselves, they were no different from stubborn rocks. If this wasn't a dream, then what was? Could there be a more exaggerated and illusory dream than this? They must have developed inner demons during their recent cultivation. Otherwise, how could they have such ridiculous hallucinations? However, when everyone thought it was an inner demon, an illusion, or a dream, then it wasn't normal. Soon, everyone truly understood what had happened. Regardless of the cause and effect, no one cared about the fate of the Flying Cloud sect. Everyone only knew one thing, and that was that Yang Chen had fed a golden ball to Mu Mingyuan. Then, Mu Mingyuan had gone through three calamities and ascended in the short time it took for a joss stick to burn. Just what kind of elixir was that golden ball that Yang Chen had fed Mu Mingyuan? How could it have such powerful medicinal effects? Was it a new elixir refined by Master Yang Chen himself? Could he get it? This was the question that everyone was concerned about. Not to mention the outsiders who didn't know about the demon bead. Even Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, who had experienced in the demon continent together, fell into a sluggish state when they saw the golden ball with a radius of 3 feet at the beginning. From the looks of it, that thing should be a demonic pearl, right? But such a big one, and they dare to call it a demonic pearl? The devilish ball is more like it, right? Where did he get such a heaven-defying treasure? Finally, after the experience of the mortal world, the two women's state of mind had been greatly improved, and they soon understood a lot. Their own evildoer husband could even get the ultimate demonized demon vine of the second grade of the Earth Immortal. What was a demonic pearl with a radius of 3 feet? It was estimated that it was a demonic pearl condensed by a human immortal-level demonized demon beast. It was really not enough for their husband. However, what the two women took for granted, in the eyes of others, was simply explosive news. Those who had come to watch the fun instantly understood. The first thing they did after coming to their senses was to run as fast as they could. Last time, the secret plane of the Taishaman was exposed, and the Taishaman detained tens of thousands of cultivators on the spot. This time, such a big event, Chunyang Palace also dispatched so many people. Did they also want to block the news? If they didn't run at this time, were they waiting to be caught by the people of Chunyang Palace? Such a great injustice. The people who followed Yang Chun, from the head of the palace to the disciples who had just been allowed to go out to experience, never had such a thought. They just followed to see what kind of surprise Yang Chun would make, and wanted to see how Mu Mingyuan would personally take revenge. There was really no other meaning. The masters who followed from the Hall of Eccentrics of Chunyang Palace had no other thoughts at this moment. From now on, Chunyang Palace was their home. No matter how many benefits were given, they could not let them abandon their home. Whoever dared to be rude to Chunyang Palace was their enemy. Yang Chen's show was for them to see. It was to let all the masters of the monster clan in the world know how Chunyang Palace treated the masters of their sect's Hall of Eccentrics. As long as this matter was spread, as long as one was a member of the monster clan, the first choice to join the sect would definitely be Chunyang Palace, and there would be no other. The masters naturally had their own thoughts. They could understand what Yang Chan said about Mu Mingyuan's troubles after ascending to the spiritual world. If they were allowed to choose, they would rather choose to cultivate themselves and cross their own tribulations instead of relying on this kind of external force. From this perspective, Yang Chan was really right. Let's go back to the sect first. The matter was really too big. After the head of the palace in Chunyang Palace woke up from the shock, he just gave such an order and rushed back to Chunyang Palace with a large group of people. No matter how many words or how many questions they had, they would talk about it when they went back. This was not the place to talk. Yang Chen's big medicinal pill allowed a master who had been crippled to cross 3 disasters and ascend to heaven within the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. With the propaganda of those fleeing onlookers, the news spread throughout the mortal world of cultivators at the fastest speed. The first reaction of all the cultivators who heard of this was that it was impossible, and the second reaction was that it was a dream. In short, no one believed it. But they couldn't stand the vows of these masters who saw this scene to prove it, so they had no choice but to believe it. Perhaps the guarantee of some rogue cultivators was not surprising, but the masters sent by some big sect to observe this matter also made a vow of heart demon, which was a completely different matter. Boom! The whole world of cultivators seemed to be ignited and completely erupted. Countless sect hurriedly sent messengers to Chunyang Palace to inquire about what kind of heaven-defying medicinal pill had such an effect. Countless underground masters began to ponder how to get this medicinal pill or formula from the hands of Master Yang Chun. After this incident, even if they couldn't stand Yang Chun, they had to express a voice of admiration from the bottom of their hearts. A master was indeed a master. He really deserved his reputation. The reaction of the 5 major sects was equally shocked, but some people were happy and some were worried. The happiest ones were naturally the sect where Yang Chen's 2 wives were, the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect. What was the saying that the pavilion close to the water enjoys the moonlight first? The flowers and trees facing the sun are easy to spring. This was it.